Hi, live. I'm Bob.
A lot of shit. Live on YouTube?
Yes.
Hell yeah. What is the other channel? Can we get a
It's
link of the Twitch channel? Oh, hey, gotta fucking plug yourself on Twitch, brother. Nobody's gonna go if you don't know. At CAD Plays, you said?
Yes.
Oh, somebody should link that shit on. Maybe somebody should. Where am I?
You're in the Matrix, Trubs.
Oh, there you go. Is that it? Hope that's you. Yes, it is. You're welcome.
I mean, it's literally just his face.
Oh yeah, I pinned it.
The icon.
What the fuck? Why can't I pin that? Oh, yo, somebody pin my message.
I'm already subscribed.
Hey, let's
Wait, where did you pin it?
that Twitch chat. Oh,
Yeah, I don't. Oh, wait, I see it now. Okay.
I need you to
Yeah.
pin it at Twitch chat so there's a link so they can click so they can hit sub so let the cycle go. Not me, sub you. Oh, Bob just
Wow, Bob.
I had to remember how to.
there you go. Fight. Here, just copy pasta that and delete a fucking space between the exclamation and the and then well, like I said, copy pasta the rest and then
Just keep it for personal use.
hell yeah. Hell. Come YouTube, copy pasta you add live stream channel. Yeah, you'll live.
Can you do the YouTube stuff for me and Bob?
Still don't know.
Yeah, eat that one.
Didn't we recommend you like chicken and rice?
The
You
neighbors.
did, but that would have required having thought.
That's some edge.
I mean, there's always the neighbors.
Fuck.
Hell yeah.
Wait, what?
Nani? You asked for that. Had me until the washing machine.
You're lucky
Never
they
mind
can't
when
hear you.
vents in the dryer.
Bruh.
Brother.
Bruh.
Bruh.
This new
Bruh.
reflective.
Oh, these. What do you mean? Dum, 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 dum.
Frog.
They'd be right.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are
There. Another.
Have fun, Torkins.
who was
Bye.
Hello, everybody. I just got the tweet out. Do me the favor, go give it some love. There's another channel named Cad Plays, and originally thought that one was yours. That's really weird. I did a community post on YouTube that has both the links, but it let me take the Cad Plays, the Cad Plays handle. So like, I assume they have a different handle, and it's really weird because as far as I know, I'm the only Cadroth in existence. So, I mean, like, it's a small world, but yeah, that just seems really odd. Let me grab you guys today's sauce. I am late primarily due to we are having technical difficulties on the YouTube side. All self-induced, not like anything YouTube did on this one. Just there were a couple of steps that I forgot to complete, and some of them will have to be completed after stream, so it just is the way it is. But anyways, I'm good to go. Let's get this party started. I love how it like jump cuts there, and black screen as well. Here is today's artwork. Do me a favor, go give the artist some love. There we go. There is the... Oh. Alright, there's another thing I need to do. The bot is not enabled on the YouTube channel yet, so that's gonna be... Well, that's gonna be fun. Anyways... Let me appoint some people as... Oh, that's why. I was in... I don't know how, but somehow it clicked into LB7, and it broke the capture card at the beginning. So, like, I was exiting it, but, you know how that treats my capture card. So, it'd be what it be. How is everything on the YouTube side of things for you guys? Is everything good? Bitrate good? Everything smooth? Doing good? Okay, sweet. Yeah, like I said, I basically my two bots that I used to like run chat, neither is working on the YouTube side right at the moment, which is no real problem. It just means that like commands don't work on that end, and I'm not going to be able to see YouTube chat unless I keep the actual YouTube dashboard open, which I will try to do so that I can actually read your comments. However, I'm going to ask everybody, especially for this first stream, to be a little patient with me. If I don't read your comments, it's probably due to the fact that I'm not seeing them. Hello, everybody. Again, I hope everyone's doing good. Sorry, I'm just getting caught up on both the... Now I have to read two chats, basically, instead of having it all consolidated. The lovely art. Oh, thank you, Wood. Appreciate it. Go thank the artist, though. Other handle is cadplays3331. Yeah, handles are first come, first serve. So like I sniped the CAD plays handle like back when they first implemented it. So like that's probably all that is it's just another channel by a similar name. And they're probably not a partnered channel either. So actually this new / old VODs channel here is not partnered either, so it won't be monetized basically until we get at least 1,000 subscribers on it. I'm confident we can do that, but that might take some time because y'all know my regulars are my regulars, and I don't really like. I don't know. I have not really done much growth as a content creator here over the past couple of years. I've mostly just maintained my audience, and those that I lose, I replace with new people. But it's not enough to like really like boom or anything like that. So it just is what it is. Time to plan a subathon? Yeah, maybe, right? Like maybe we could do something to actually like drum up support for the channel. But it is what it is. I've subscribed even though I'll stick with Twitch. Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, if everybody could do me the favor and go subscribe to the new VODs channel, anybody that has it, it's going to help me. So by all means, feel free to, because like I said, I think you need 1,000 subscribers and 1,000 watch hours. The 1,000 watch hours will get hit really fast due to the length of my streams. So like for instance, if even 10 people watch one of my streams, that is 40 watch hours already right there. 10 of those such streams would be quite literally 400 watch hours. So at that point, even just based off simplified math, I should have it functionally in like 25 streams at most. So I assume you guys will be able to help me out in that regard. But yeah, so it's like the subscribers is the bigger hurdle to actually get through. I am so confused as to what Bob is giving advice about, and it terrifies me. I have an inkling of what Bob's giving advice about, but I'm just afraid that that's the truth. Puppies. Okay. I thought it was babies, and I was like, dear God, I hope Bob's not giving like motherly advice. That makes me feel a little bit better. And hello, everybody on the YouTube side. Appreciate you. All the concurrent viewers on that end helps. But yeah, like I said, the big reason that I made the switch is apparently, and I found this out sometime later, both, you know, from actual like articles telling me it after I researched it, but also from like literally experiencing it, that like basically YouTube, the way it works a lot of the times, it goes like, oh, this is your average viewership, so for your next video we expect your average viewership to be at that level. Oh, did your views on this video actually do better? Okay, cool, now we expect this to be the case. So unfortunately what the deal was is, even though my videos were like up here in terms of their performance, my live streams were down here, and so over time it just kept trending my videos down. So I'm a little bit too late on this. I do think the like YouTube audience for FGO has shrunk a little bit in the past year or two, but it's definitely hurt me in a much more negative way, and I need to get back to just making videos on the main channel. So it's why we're getting the VODs, the actual live streams off of it, so that it doesn't hurt it. And in case you're wondering, it's because after a live stream concludes, it converts it into an actual video. So I'm like, okay, well, we just need an actual live stream account, and then a separate account for all of my actual content. And then therefore they won't necessarily interact with each other or hurt each other in that regard. Chat has a secret love child. I'm sure that's possible. As an odd algorithm, if your long streams affect viewership, it really is, and I don't know why they can't tell the difference between like hey, you know, this is a 4-hour live stream that got converted into a VOD, and hey, this is an actual like just uploaded, posted video. I do know some of my videos do get long in terms of their length, but most of them are not the 4-hour length or anything like that. Like Banner Review, ironically enough, is one of the few videos that ever is that long. And even still, like this year, we're going a lot faster with Banner Review, so I don't expect that to be the case. Like I'm actually trying to cut down on a lot of the time that I spend on the videos. The upcoming JP event will be Lunar New Year based, celebrate the year of the snake. Yes and no. I think if you're just attributing this to snakes, you're probably off the mark. I was talking with Avalon about it earlier today, and like when you actually go through the list, like half the list is snake. The other half the list is dragon, and then there's a couple of units that actually are like there that are rather they're anti-dragon more than anything. So I think attributing this to like, oh, it's just going to be because of Year of the Snake, I don't think it's going to be that simple. It may have like the overarching theme of that, but I think it's going to be a lot more involved than something like that. And there is a servant at least that I think will probably show up here. We'll see. I think I have a guess at the welfare as well as like the main servant, assuming there is a welfare, right? They're all snakes. So this is an interesting thing, right? Because both the Chinese zodiac as well as Japanese mythology does make a distinction between the two. I do think you could very easily like say like, oh, well, it's close enough, and that may be what's going on. But I'm gonna tell you guys there's probably more to it than that. Okay. Snakes on a ray shift. Listen, I don't want to have to cuss, but I will get those snakes off that ray shift. And actually, yeah, I guess I should probably try not to curse at all on the new streams. I should try not to do that so I don't get demonetized. I mean, I'm under no delusions that I can actually pull that off, like long term. I will definitely slip up and drop the F-bomb, but I can at least try to do it very sparingly. And in fact, I heard this statement the other day, and I kind of agree. There's a point where you finally start to get old enough that you should stop cussing all the time, because it actually has more impact the less you do it. Where it's like, if nobody ever hears you cuss and then you finally drop an F-bomb, everyone's like... So that's what I need to start heading towards. I need to be the strong and silent type that instead drops the F-bomb, you know, like only when something truly insane happens. Tell that to my father. Yeah, I don't think it's for everybody, right? My night's going pretty good, JC. How's yours? We're getting a little bit of a late start to stream, but actually, like, aside from Banner Review, there's really not that much to do tonight. I will go over at least the like news bulletin for the new JP event with you guys here real fast, but there were no like upgrades or anything today. So today was a actually relatively light day, and it's weird because we don't often get these. Normally there's like so many different things that are going on in FGO, but it is nice every once in a blue moon to actually have it happen. Liz Japan? Yeah, so Liz Japan's my guess for the welfare. We'll see whether or not it actually occurs. You don't have all the Liz's in there, but the thing is, and this is why I always caution people about reading too much into a, like, here are all the, like, bonus units, because a lot of the time the bonus units for an event that they give you ahead of the event are not complete. At minimum, it doesn't include, obviously, the new unit that's being hidden, but it also has a tendency to have, like, certain units that would I guess be like dead giveaways to what the character is or something like that, sometimes also get excluded. So like, who knows? It may be a like 90% complete list, or it may be like an 80% complete list. And so as a result, it's like you could just get yourself in a little bit of like, I'm not gonna say hot water, I guess, but like you can kind of end up over assuming things based purely off of the support arrangement. I think we will get a Kyo. Kyo could be a really nice one. King Protea and Tiamat not being in there while being snakish probably means something. I mean, I wouldn't really say they're snakish. I think King Protea not being there could say something, but it really just depends. Like, we do have a soccer face in there, but the soccer face that we have in there quite literally has the dragon trait because it's melt. It's summer melt, who is a leviathan, and leviathans are clearly dragons. As you can see, like that's exactly why she had to be included, not to be like stiffed in any way, shape, or form. Let's see. Actually, is there any? I have an interlude, and I don't think these are 50% off. Yeah, see, like, someone was trying to tell me that it's like all of them are 50% off, at least on JP, but I don't think they are. I think it's only a handful that are. And I have literally just been, like, curb stomping these basically with my Ember Gathering comp. Is Simi Bond 5 finally? Yes, she is. Do I want to make her Bond 6? No. Not really. Not until they buff her. We're going to bond by MHX in the back line here a little bit. Just because, as you guys can see, we have already started a process on MHX. Unfortunately, she is capped out on coins right now, so I actually have to rush her bond, which is not something I normally have to do on either server. You need to get the Saber ones done. I think they're limited at the moment. Yeah, like, they should be available at least, like, for the remainder of the week, right? And maybe even the entire month. I don't know. I'd have to look. Cad, will you be doing all your missing interludes on NA or JP? Yeah, on NA they are. Which is surprising, because I didn't think that was a thing. You still be on Tiamat yesterday, so I decided to roll for her. Damn! No, I'm just kidding. Like, and again, I really do mean when I say I think Tiamat. I think there's 4 units coming up this year. Okay, Tiamat, Draco, Cuckoo, and Castoria Berserker. I think out of these 4 units, they are so strong, every single person should consider whether or not to roll. Doesn't mean you have to, but they're that strong. I think there's a couple of honorable mentions here as well. Pez could definitely be one of them. At least that comes off the top of my head. I'd have to think about some of the other ones. Like maybe like Mel Ruler and stuff like that. But like ultimately these are the 4 that I think like nobody can really avoid making a deliberation on these. You need to look at the unit and decide for yourself whether or not you want them. As opposed to like oh, you know, like, I don't know, say like Takasugi. Takasugi is a unit that everybody in the game can easily skip. Does it mean he's bad? No. It just means that he doesn't really do anything that's like really worthy of your attention. Like, oh my god, this is such a unique thing. You're going to need it for some meta thing. You're going to have it. Takasugi can quite safely be ignored if you don't like the character. If you do like the character, he can also quite safely be rolled. So I don't want anyone to take that as like, oh, I'm saying Takasugi is bad. Not the case. I'm simply saying those 4 units are so strong and so unique, you should all consider what they do. You should all consider whether or not you should roll. And I think that is the best way that I can put it for you. What you guys choose to do with that knowledge and that information is completely up to you, though. Yeah, thank you. Ace is definitely another one. Like Ace, Tez, just getting Thomas Takasugi, maybe? Yeah. I'm just trying to think if there's anybody else that I'm forgetting off the top of my head. Really? 4K? God damn it. So this is the only thing that happens here is because I'm literally just leveling the Mystic code. I just waltz right in, and sometimes these 2 out of 2 waves don't clear, and I end up having to 3-turn it, but it just is what it is. I'm gonna be biased and say Kenshin. Kenshin is an honorable mention. She is not in that like group of 4. And the reason for that is because the alternatives to Kenshin are that freaking strong. When you literally have Estrella out there and Estrella just wrecks face. Kenshin is stronger than Estrella. But it's not like by so much that you're like, oh my god, I must roll Kenshin. Right? So I think people that are sitting there with their Estrella, they're kind of just like, it is what it is, right? Like if you like your Estrella, you don't have to roll Kenshin. The thing that I like that Kenshin does, Kenshin buff strips, and that's really nice. It's really nice to have on a challenge unit because it just means that you're going to carve up a lot of bosses as if they are just butter. And that's obviously a good thing to have. Whether or not that is, again, something that you have interest in is up to you. Yeah, I'd say Durg is also in the honorable mention list. Kuro Avenger. So, Kuro Avenger definitely does something unique. I'm going to admit my own self-bias here. I don't believe Kuro Avenger warrants a mention. Purely because most people, I think, after acquiring her, will realize that they just almost never want to use her. It's not that what she does isn't strong. It's that for the vast majority of circumstances, you don't have to do it, and you don't want to do it. And the reason you don't want to do it is because usually it causes party cost considerations. It usually causes a whole bunch of extra button presses, and probably more so than that, it's going to hurt people's heads. I'll never forget when Kuro Avenger came out and everyone was like, okay, Cad, when are you going to talk about the Kuro system? And I had to kind of tell chat, what do you mean the Kuro system? There really isn't one. You can't sit there and formulaically solve Kuro because it's different for how she needs to work with every freaking unit. And so as a result, you need to understand how Kuro works more than actually like having like, oh, this is the set solution for Kuro. And so that's going to make it difficult for people to use her because a lot of people are just going to go, I don't want to have to think about this. I don't want to have to think about the party order and what turn to press what. And they're just going to go like, this is not worth the effort. So that's where my bias is. If you don't think that way and you think completely opposite that you will use her a shit ton, by all means, roll her, right? But that's where, again, like, to me, I think the vast majority of the community will probably take that approach. It's just not everyone will. Shows what she can do for a lot of high-end nodes and events, so yeah. She does. And again, like, I think the biggest issue is that party cost consideration, because you give something up if you're trying to use her. So that we are clear, chat. Usually when you're using Kuro, you not only have a damage dealer, you have a support, another support, a tertiary support, and then Kuro. This is a lot of cost. You are taking up all 5 of your unit slots, basically. So, sorry, all 5. You're taking up 5 of your unit slots. The support is logically going to be one of these, like your friend support's logically going to be one of these supports. It leaves you very little. I can almost guarantee that that's going to put MASH into your backline. I can almost guarantee that that's going to put a huge squeeze on what craft essences you're using. But aside from that, if you feel like you can pull it off, more power to you. Haven't heard anyone talk about her since release. And that's, I think that's kind of why. I think most people aren't using her. It's sort of like Qingong. I think Qingong is the closest equivalent I can give you. Is Qingong a viable like system and a viable comp that you guys can run? Yes. However, most people do not want to run Qingong because of how cumbersome and like annoying it can be. And I think that's really just the crux of the matter. Viable bond 15 to all supports. True, yeah. We'll get Kuro for when Avalon tells me to use her. Yeah, and in that regard, I'm not telling you not to roll for her. I'm saying while she does do unique stuff, I think most people are going to treat her as a novelty more than like, hey, this is the go-to solution for a lot of things. So to me, she's not a meta support by any stretch of the imagination. I'd almost put her in the echelon as like Miss Crane. She's, to me, a little bit more usable than Miss Crane, but it's still kind of in that level of like, I think most people will just go like, eh. Kuro is a unit you'll get by rolling Castoria Berserker. True. Very true. I was gonna say she's mini crane. She is. She just, it's really difficult to talk about her in depth without like having her in front. But like, I'm trying to stay like above it and not get nitty gritty with you guys. Just that like, I wouldn't really call Kuro a fun unit, but I think what she enables is fun. If that makes any sense. You don't want to buff Miss Crane too much. She's still a unit that can make a comp hit the hardest. Yeah, I think Miss Crane is just in general like, she's an interesting and valuable tool. That is definitely not what I selected. There we go. But there's obvious concerns with like, do you break the game? Honestly, in that regard, like, I have to admit that the Kuro system and like what she actually enables, it's so like big brain. It's so genius again, and I have to keep using that term. It's so smart of the devs that they were able to implement something like that. It's just, again, like it's cumbersome. It's unwieldy. It's something that a lot of people will not want to like have to go through. But like the fact that they were able to like put a unit in the game like that and it doesn't just break the game is kind of wild, right? Rational Meatbag, thank you for the follow, as well as Renages or Ringes. Actually, I'm sure it's Ringes. Thank you for the follow. Kura's important because she allows a rash to Black Grail loop. Yeah, that's the way you should look at it. It's the triple a rash comp. That's the real thing that you're after. People will use Summer Kura when all their meta supports are fully max bonded. No, and the reason why is because usually where Summer Kuro, I think, gets the most actual use is with your Buster units. What Summer Kuro really allows a lot of units to do is she allows them to extend their charge capacity. So what she's facilitating them doing is basically being able to start with a better craft essence than they otherwise would. Particularly like say like a 50% charger being close to being able to use Black Grail but not being able to touch it normally. Kuro's going to allow them to touch it. The problem with something like that is that invariably, like, you kind of still have to use the meta supports to make it even remotely close to possible. So this is why I say, like, when the developers tell me stupid bullshit like, hey, if your servant is bond 15, roll another unit, I'm like, cool, come out with literally Koyanskaya 2 Electric Boogaloo. Because you're literally telling me that there is some sort of alternative to Koyanskaya. And there is not. Like, what Koyanskaya does as a support is wholly unique. There are other units that can do similar functions, but they will not work in the same system that she does. And so therefore, there is no alternative to rolling Koyanskaya. Koyanskaya must be relied on for certain compositions. Particularly, as you guys can see right here, me trying to do something with Arcuid, yes, I might be able to get the cooldown to work without one of the Koyanskayas. What's my issue going to be, though? It's going to be that I'm using suboptimal supports, and therefore my damage goes in the shitter if I'm actually trying to still get it. So when I start using, instead of Koyanskaya, a unit like, I don't know, like Edison or something like that, it's not going to be as good for Arcuid's damage output, and therefore it's going to cost me. So you can assume that a statement to such a degree is either a statement designed to get you to just roll more, as naive as it is, or a long-winded, like, long con type statement where they know that you can't roll an alternative and they hope that you try instead to use other units, realize how lackluster that is, and then decide to roll higher in P levels of the given damage dealer instead to make up for that. Which is big brain if that's what they're actually after. Ultimately, at the end of the day, though, it leads to their stance is basically that you should just roll more. And again, it's not really a great stance to have. Obviously, we know the devs have such a stance, but it doesn't really help the community at all because the community can't roll for something that doesn't exist. So at the end of the day, it's basically like just telling us to grit our teeth and bear with it. More of their nuts they already have? Are we making like a squirrel allegory here? Or oh, units, okay. Hold on. Yeah, and like, again, you guys know how I am. I am somebody that will try to like spread that around and try to get away with using other units. Doesn't matter. Again, my Koyansky is bond 15, my Castoria is bond 15, my Oberon is bond 14, my OG Scotty is bond 14, my Summer Scotty's bond 12, my Nero Bride's bond 12, like, my Waver and my Reigns are bond 11. There's only so many options I have for doing something like that. I can go out and roll other units. Those units will not necessarily add to the capacity and capability of this account. Like, I'm going to be real with y'all for a second. The number one thing that holds back the performance of this account is quite literally, and this is why I talk about it, quite literally the fact that I don't have another Black Grail. Therefore, I don't have MLB Black Grail, despite playing on JP for 6 years now. Not anything I can do about that, other than roll more, right? So it's like, is the biggest thing holding my account back not having a unit? No, it's quite literally just not having luck in the gacha. Yeah, it'll come eventually. It's just one of those deals where the dev idea of like use more units, spend more money to get more units, it's nice in premise, but there's only so much you can do. Like, that advice works on a newer player that doesn't have very many options. That advice does not work on a veteran player that has rolled all the units they wish to roll. So, therefore, they kind of find themselves in a weird spot. Oh, we can probably seal this one. That's what I'll do. Well, if I seal it, then I won't get the extra Umu bond, and I won't get the Mystic Code leveling. By the way, chat, new Mystic Code already ranked 6. This new Mystic Code will be done probably within the week. So you need to use more quick. I do. However, again, like I said, my OG Scotty is bond 14. Not like it's underused, right? So my newer Scotty isn't as high, but it is what it is. But JP would be close to out damaging my NA. My JP would be close to catching my NA. I don't know about out damaging, but oh, that's 200k. Oh boy. Oops. I probably should have paid a little bit more attention and popped some more buffs. Not that it's actually it's not gonna matter. It's still gonna die because it's triple buster arc chain. They want us to stop using Oberon, but make every node as if you have Oberon in your party. Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna be real with y'all for a second. I don't think anyone can deny the fact that 90++ and 90 star nodes are designed around the existence of Oberon. Like, I think if you're denying that, it is what it is. But like, it's 100% meant to be that case because. And somebody told me there was like some rage bait or something that got posted to the subreddit earlier today, and I'm gonna say this to a degree, and I didn't go look at the post myself, so I have no idea. But my understanding of the post is that someone was asserting that the game is not free-to-play friendly because they can't use their NP1 Arjuna altar in 90++ content. Hear me out on this. To a degree, they're right. They're actually right. Why do I say that? Because the only reason 90++ content exists is because of Oberon. And the only reason 90++ content exists because of Oberon is to try to get you to roll more NP levels. That is the truth of the matter. When they put Oberon in the game, they realized they had a problem. They realized that Oberon made every single node in the entire game at that time doable with just NP1 of any given unit. So that's kind of why they set out to do that. And you can see they actually stalled. They went 18 months without an Oberon banner. They did not want to release him back into the wild again. And in that time period, they did release 90++. So it stands to reason that's the entire point to it. Does that mean that the game is not free-to-play friendly, though? Fuck no. I'm going to give them credit where credit's due because I have seen that a lot of other gacha games do this mentality where they say, oh, let's say you have difficulty 1, difficulty 2, and difficulty 3 for a node. We can call it, like 90, 90+, and 90++ if you want. In other gacha games, each of these nodes gives the exact same reward. There is no difference in the amount of currency you get off these nodes. So you're not penalized if your account can't do it or if your account is newer or something like that. I do think most other events and most other games are dumbed down like literal like drivel. But I can look at that system and say there is some intelligent design behind that. And that I do wish, even if maybe you got less rewards for like 85, 80, level 70 nodes, yada, yada, yada. To a degree, having the same reward from 90, 90 plus, and 90 plus plus would be good. Instead, what we have is you have the 90 node, which is sort of standard, the 90 plus node, which basically ends up giving you everything that the 90 node did, essentially with shop materials on top of it, and then the 90 plus plus node, which is quite literally more of the same. And the only real difference between 90 plus and 90 plus plus is usually the essential materials that drop between them. There's a little bit of a master experience and bonding level like difference there, but usually it's not enough to scare away most players from picking between the two. So I'm going to give them the fact that it's stupid that there is an actual difference here. I'm going to give them the fact that the existence of 90 plus plus is 100% meant to drive the gacha and actually make you roll for more. But I'm going to disagree that it makes the game, that it actually makes the game free to play friendly. And the reason why is because chat immediately had it pegged right from the outset. There really is nothing stopping you from just dropping down. This is also why, and I'm going to go out there and I'm going to say this right now, chat. When people try to tell me that like multi-damage dealer compositions are more prevalent now than single damage dealer compositions, I laugh at them. Because literally every content from here on back, easily doable with just a single damage dealer. Easily doable. Only really in 90 plus plus and up do you have any real consideration for multiple damage dealers now. So here's the other question. Is it more prevalent than an actual single devoted damage dealer? Well, chat, ask yourself this. How many of you guys in the audience have an NP5 120 anything in the game? Usually the reason for that is probably because you really like the unit. But there's also a low-key reason behind the scenes, which is that you think that it will be a strong composition to handle nodes like that with. You have buffed your unit to hell and back to make them more capable to be able to handle such content. Now, I can look at that and I can say, just like with me in the prior JP event, what did I do for the 90 plus plus node? I absolutely single damage dealered it. I shat on it with my Artoria. Before that point, I was doing multiple damage dealers. And do you know what it reminded me of, chat? So, literally the 90 plus plus before that point, I was handling with Takaru, and Castoria Berserker. After I figured out that I could do this, I did it with just my Artoria 120. OG Artoria. And it reminded me of the Omni-Man meme of, look what they need to equal even a fraction of our power. It took multiple NPs on the final wave to equal the same firepower that I could squeeze out of this. There's an issue there. And this is getting a little reductive. But I'm going to say, at the end of the day, the fact that this is even possible and somehow does more damage than this proves my point. You see, here's the issue with multiple damage dealer compositions. You usually cannot actually leverage more damage with them. Not without some sort of cost. So what do I mean when I say that? I mean, pound for pound, a single damage dealer can always be enhanced to deal more damage than a multi-damage dealer composition, unless we cheat and we use 2 NPs in the final wave or something like that. That is to say, you can always make the single damage dealer deal more damage in 3 NPs than the multi-damage dealers can deal in 3 NPs. The difference is they can get a 4th NP out. And that really is the issue. So you can do synergistic things to really buff a multi-damage dealer composition, but no, it doesn't actually result in more damage without you making some sort of sacrifice. What's the sacrifice here? The sacrifice here is you did a 4th NP, making your node run take longer. If you're not doing a lotto, you don't fucking care. It just is the way it is. If you are doing a lotto, though, some people really do care about that. Some people don't want to have to waste the time to do the 4th NP or the extra button presses to make it all possible. So it does end up in an interesting spot. I'm going to say at the end of the day, there's nothing wrong with running multiple damage dealers, but I am going to say this assertion that somehow it is more prevalent than the single damage dealer comps that literally 90% of the game is run with is kind of wild to me. I think usually this is an easy way to get more firepower out of less NP levels. This is an easier way to just have a one-size-fits-all solution. If that makes any sense. So free-to-play models are going to look way more at trying to make use of multiple damage dealers, usually because it's all they can run. Whereas a lot of dolphins and a lot of whales are going to try to go with a single damage dealer solution because it's easier. It's faster, and they don't care because they already spent money on the game to roll. So it's an interesting dilemma. And so usually when someone tells me this, like, hey, aren't you going to kind of assert that this is more prevalent and more popular? No, I'm not. Because I'd be willing to bet that if I took a poll of chat right now, there would be some free-to-play people. They would also be the minority in this chat. Doesn't mean that this is the case everywhere. But I think in general, if you were to go look at any given gacha game, I think you would see logically the result being at least some sort of 60-40 split, with the result being 60% of the people pay. This doesn't mean that they're necessarily a whale, but it does mean that they've spent some amount of money on the game. And I'd say it's probably 40% or less are actual free-to-play in any given game. Any given, like, live service gacha game. Okay? So right there you can see then that's going to lend itself more towards a prevalence of models that actually suit the paying players. I have always on this channel tried to like bend over backwards to help the free-to-plays because I understand like the way FGO and it's like especially like the way guide makers used to handle FGO was like quite literally guides for me but not for thee, in the sense of like it was literally only for the whales. And I tried to do my best effort to make guide content more available to free-to-plays. Tried to make it so that people could understand more of the mechanics on things, so that it was not just about whales. But there is a point where some of this becomes quite literally impossible to do. For instance, a lot of people with the prior 90++ node were complaining. Does anyone in chat remember why people were complaining about that node? I'm curious to see if anyone actually remembers the reasoning behind it. Because it was an interesting one, if you ask me. Do different power mods, that is Divine and Sky, stack multiplicative or additive? Power mods stack additive with each other no matter what they are. And this is actually a really interesting thing because event modifiers are considered a power mod. So if you have a damage bonus in event, that is a power mod. So it's additive with any other power mod that you use. JP 90++, sorry. Allow me to clarify. This is the lotto that I'm talking about. Like with me and Tiamat in a few months, gonna 120 in P5. Yeah, and I'm not gonna say like everybody and their brother has to like in P5 something, but I do think there is some logic to how I think a lot of the community thinks is that if I consolidate into a couple of units, so like we'll say like Unit A, Unit B, Unit C, and Unit D. If I consolidate most of my rolling into these units, I can make them really high in P levels, and then I can use them as their very catch-all units in a lot of the nodes for farming. And that's why I think there is like this massive obsession with like unit performance and stuff like that, particularly when it comes to NP levels. I think there's a huge obsession in FGO with the performance of a unit being largely dictated by how much NP damage that it does. And that is kind of why. I think a lot of people look at that and they go like, hey, the easiest way to solve this game is to go in hard on a couple of units rather than to try and collect them all. Bima being Sky. Yeah, so Bima being Sky was actually kind of nasty for a lot of the Sabers. You did have somebody like Nero Bride that could actually bring the Sky power mob. The problem with that sort of thing was that Bima had so much health that it actually outclassed a lot of the stuff. So you had two choices. Choice number one was basically to use the damage CE that actually, was there a damage C? I don't even remember. Let me go back and double check so I don't stick my foot in my mouth. Because I want to say there was one in the boxes. Yes, there was. Let me do it now just for my sake. No, there was not one in the boxes. Was it in the shop this time? There was not a damage C in the event. Okay. So, quite literally, that was one of your issues. Because your normal solution is to usually go with a damage CE. Your secondary solution, and this is where I think a lot of this comes in, is to try and take like charge CEs if the event has it. The issue at play is this event basically gave you a charge C, but it did not give you a damage C. So you were just kind of in a shitty spot depending on what you were trying to do. And that made things pretty rough. People couldn't really leverage the damage because Bima was somewhat of a rare composition that didn't have a whole lot of things to exploit. And his health was almost, I'm going to say, unfairly tuned. I talked about this before, but I said Bima had something like 800k health. And what the reality was is Bima could have had 600k health and he would have still given some people some problems. So the fact that he was probably 200k health over where he actually needed to be caused major issues. And I'm going to say there was a very logical reason that I think this was the case. Because I seem to remember the last time, or not the last time, but at least one of the times that they made basically a relatively low HP Lancer node, people were like looping over it with Melisyn instead, and then being like, oh my god, Melisyn neutral loop, oh my god, this node's so bad. But the reality that you run into is that instead, it's usually just a case of like the units that were actually at play, as well as like the capability of that class as a whole. So it's not like the Sabers are uncapable. The problem was it was a bad match, and it was in an event that did not have a damage C, even though the health value seemed almost designed for a damage C. So the reality there was, instead, one of the only good solutions to the node was to actually take a damage bonus unit. That is to say, as chat had already pointed out, Lohi was actually a really good solution. The problem with this is it basically hard pressured you to actually roll the unit. I actually don't like this. I'm perfectly fine with the gotcha unit being useful to the node. I'm not fine with the gotcha unit being one of the only solutions to the node. That causes problems. So again, I think like that can be a scummy way of doing things if you look at it from that perspective. And there are some games that do that. FGO normally doesn't, but I think that node in particular did cause us some issues. And so when you start to look at that, it starts to become a little bit of a problem. And this is where, again, like the multiple damage dealers are one of those solutions. But when you're in a lotto, you don't want a quad NP. You want a 3 NP. You want to get through the node quick and easy and get to another run. So then the problem becomes, what do you do? People want to 6-slot a 90++ node. What do they do if they can't? Well, then they start trying to 5-slot the 90++ node. What do they do if they can't do that? Because again, like I said, no damage C in this one. So this one you can almost just rule out. I guess you couldn't, but what you could look at it as is you would have had to have taken something like MLB Black Graham. So instead, people started looking at 6-slotting the 90+. And that's, again, where all of that can happen. But this is where you'll get people complaining. This is where they'll say, like, this is bullshit, this is unfair. Not because they're actually having to do the 90+, but instead because they feel like they have to be able to do the 90++ at maximum efficiency. And I've told you guys this before. I'll tell you it again. You might watch me 6-slot a 90++. You do not have to do that, and that is not the expectation for 90++. The developers balance 90++ around 5-slotting, which is why I think it's stupid when they don't give you a damage C in a scenario like that. But they actually balance it around 5-slotting. They balance the 90+ on 6-slot. So if this is 90+ and this is 90++, and the developers are balancing it around this, if you're doing 6-slot of a 90++, you're already like insane. You're already breaking the game. You're doing something that the developers didn't intend you to do. So it is what it is. Have they ever come out and said this directly? No, but it seems very apparent due to the design and the values of the nodes that basically the intention for 90++ is a 5-slot node. It's just, again, people have sat there and they've gone like, oh yeah, I'm just going to absolutely like annihilate the ever-loving crap out of this with my NP5 120 unit. So that's made a lot of people think that this is something that they need to do, that they need to 6-slot the 90++. But the reality is you don't. And so a lot of it is just like, I'm going to say equal parts like bias on behalf of the community, because the community will always have this inherent bias for like, oh, max difficulty, well, this is then what I should be running. If the node is the highest capable possible node, that's what I should run. So there's a bias there. And then there's also, again, I think like sort of pressure from the community to actually like think that they need to do this. So this can be peer pressure. This can be watching your favorite content creator do it and you can't do it. And this can be, again, this idea that you need to be as efficient as possible. And if you're even slightly less efficient, you're somehow failing at the game. So this is where a lot of this comes in. And like I said, it's really something I tried to address and talk about in the, if you guys remember when 90++ first started becoming a thing, I put out a entrant in the Explain series, and I talked about this is the difference between 90+ and 90++, and this is why you really shouldn't care that much. This is why it really is not as big of a deal as people make it out to be. And I hope I got that across. Maybe I got that across to you guys, but I think the greater community as a whole, because I'm just, you know, I hate to say this, but I'm a small content creator in FGO, is something that I think, again, they don't really like the greater community as a whole doesn't really get this. It's not like, oh, CAD said it, so therefore everyone knows it. Quite literally, I think these sorts of things just kind of float throughout the community, and there's nothing anyone can really do about it. We can try to change that, but it's just basically always going to be present due to the design. And I'm going to tell you guys this right now. That's on purpose. The developers did design it that way on purpose. Why? Because it makes them money. This is always the case. You can trace this back to anything. I'm not going to say like every decision that the developers make is monetary minded, but I am going to say when it comes to the actual like difficulty design of the game, yeah, they're going to be thinking about the monetary aspect quite a bit whenever they design anything for the game. It's definitely a factor that the developers consider. And if you think that's not the case, you're probably naive and you're exactly the type of person they're looking for, right? Like they straight up are like, oh, sweet, this person absolutely believes in us and doesn't think that we're doing this for the money. Yeah, that's exactly what they're looking for, right? Getting ready to get snowed in this weekend. Oh, nice. Thank you for the resale, AK. Appreciate it. Do you think replacing 90++ with a 90 star and 5 times class effectiveness is a better solution? No, because I don't believe that the 5 times class effectiveness is currently enough for the current balance state of the game. For instance, if you go look at the 90 star node, the very first one that released, it was a Lancer node with a, what was it, like 2 million or something like that? A 2 million HP Vitra in it. The problem with this is there are units out there like Sumanai that can do it. There are 120 units that can do it. There are level 100 units that can do it. Most sabers can't clear this. That's why I say the 5 times is too low. If I took away anything from that, if they're going to try to incentivize you to use, and this is going to go right back to the money argument, chat. If they're going to try to incentivize you to use the proper class against this node, so like, okay, it's meant to get rid of you using a berserker. It's meant to get rid of you using a neutral looper in the node. It's meant to get rid of you using some sort of stupid counter class meme. It's designed to actually have you use sabers in this node. Then the node should be tuned to the degree that at least the majority of 4 and 5 star sabers can do it. So the fact that it isn't like I said, so do I think 5 times is a good solution? No, I think it needs to be 10 times almost. Like bump it up that much, make it easy to farm as long as you have a saber, and I don't give a shit anymore. Then I think that's really good. Heck, if they wanted to find some sort of middle ground where it's like, I don't know, like 7 times or something, I'm not like somebody that did the math on all of that. Sure, go for it. But I do think 5 times is too little at the current moment in time. But should they be easy to farm? Ooh, this is a great question. I don't mean to get like stun locked and sidetracked on this again, but I really got to say my piece on this, chat. For years, Fate Grand Order really did have a structure that outside of lotto events, NP1 was enough. And I used to just advise people to just roll NP1. It was very rare that I ever told anybody to get an NP2 of anything. That stance has changed. And it's changed due to the node structure that they have put in the game. While I think the game has gotten easier for free-to-plays due to the addition of like the Evocation Festival and the ability to reacquire old missed content, I think the game has gotten harder for free-to-plays due to the node structure. Okay? And that's not the way that it used to be. So do I think that the game should be easy to farm? Yes. Yes, I do. I actually do think that. I think you should have moments where the game is maybe a little bit harder to farm. But I think your daily 3 runs a day node, where you're already restricted due to storm pods being a limited resource, yeah, I actually don't think it should be a ball-busting node. I think that should be a reward, not a punishment. Right? Like, does that mean that it should be like the easiest thing in the world? No. I do think there should be like some barrier to entry. But I think currently the barrier is set too high, if that makes any sense. Asian Ashley, thank you for the follow. In most other gachas, 4-star units have the same rate as 4-star support item. Listen, allow me to say this. In most other gachas, 4 stars are trash. Why? Because most other gacha games, 4 stars are the lowest rarity now. And you quite literally have 4 stars and then you have 5 stars. And 5 stars are just strong. Why? Again, look no further than the money argument. FGO historically is not that way. FGO historically has had 1 through 3 stars that are viable for use. So here's my biggest issue with this. I just said that the node should be designed for most 4 to 5 stars to be viable. That's my middle ground. You're thinking this is me like caving and me being like super generous. Fuck no, I'm not. That's me taking a middle position. You want easy to farm? Why the fuck can't we use our 1 through 3 stars in any of these nodes? Why the fuck are they relegated to a situational support use or killing themselves in order to actually be useful? Because that's what the game has devolved into for farming purposes. Should not be that way. It never was that way historically. And it's only because nodes have gotten into the greater than 90 point that this has begun to go away. They've also not taken care of the 3 stars and lower as well as the 4 stars and higher. This to me makes a little bit of sense due to the fact that the 4 stars and higher are, again, the money generating units. But that being said, usually in the past, you could still at least do stuff with, you know, like, hey, I've got a strong 3 star. Yeah, you could do a node with it. Try to do a 90 plus plus with a strong 3 star now. You might be able to clear one wave if you put a lot of buffs on them, or they happen to have a niche. That's about all you're getting. In early FGO, it was solid advice to say level up everyone. Not sure about now. It's still solid advice to tell you to level up everyone. I think the biggest issue, though, is that you understand that there now needs to be priorities and you need to absolutely hyperfixate on certain units. And I'm not going to say that was never the case before. It was. It's just stronger now. So, and please, chat, don't take this as me like bristling at any of you. This is me attacking your idea, not you. Like, I don't have any ill will towards any of you. But this concept that, again, like, oh man, like would it be too easy? No. I actually think that that the game needs to get easier. I think the game has taken a turn for the worst in that regard. I think the game has gotten too high end. And again, like I said, I blame them. I blame the power creep that has gone on in the game, and I blame that entirely on them. Like, you cannot blame the community for going, wait, you just gave us a unit that doubles every source of NP damage up, and expect us not to abuse the ever-loving crap out of that. Like, you put it in front of us, you took our money, we're going to make use of it. See, here's the truth of the matter, chat. FGO never nerfs. It just makes the content hard enough that the units become less usable. These extra missions for courts for completing main story missions between Part 1 and LB7 Part 1 I'm on Trom and I'm completing those quests aren't popping the courts. Will those missions start popping when I get to LB7? I'm not sure, but that may be due to the fact that Trom is not a requirement to be able to like unlock LB7 and stuff. But I may be wrong. It's main story only, yeah. Don't say that of my young king. Yeah. And I mean, I wanted to leave it on a poignant point like that, just so that people actually do understand that this is an issue that FGO faces. It's been an issue, and unfortunately, it's just the way things are. The biggest problem that FGO faces is as they have scaled up the content, they have not scaled the same rate buffing the units, so units have gotten left behind historically now. And it's a problem. It's why they quite literally nearly broke the record for total improvements in a year last year. It's because they need to. There's actually, like, even with as many as they did last year, they still have so many they need to do. Like, chat, I'm going to go ahead and say that they could probably stand to buff a good 200 units, and even if they buffed those 200 units and we looked back, we would still probably find units that we felt needed upgrades. So it is the way that it is. Now, some people might disagree with me on that. Some people would be like, oh no, you don't actually need to buff all those units. I'm going to tell you you do. And I'm going to tell you that the content dictates it, as well as the power creep that currently exists in the game. When you have an environment in which certain units are, again, I'm going to say like hyper fixated by the community. So I'm going to take the example that we already used on chat last night, Tiamat, right? The fact that people are going to plan to go out there and try to NP5 120 a Tiamat and make that their one-size-fits-all solution as their both neutral looper and anything cavalry looper already tells you that there's somewhat of a problem. Because this means not only that Tiamat can do that, but this also means that they feel like other competitors to Tiamat aren't really worthy of that. Now, that could be due to the popularity of Tiamat in comparison to the other competitors. Like, maybe Tiamat is just a more popular unit. I think that can at least explain some of that. But it doesn't explain all of it. There's definitely people there in that group that are rolling for the gameplay reason. That is to say, they might really like Tiamat and they might get her NP1 or NP2 otherwise. That NP5 can be a reflection of, this is what I actually feel is necessary to pull this gimmick off that I'm talking about. Just like I said, you see this trend now with people as they are beginning to fixate more on a couple of key units. And so if you want to talk about like a strategy simulation game, like wherever you like Civilization, for instance, there's two concepts whenever you're playing in Civ. The concepts are that you can play tall or you can play wide. What does that mean? So in Civ, if you're playing wide, this means that you have a bunch of little cities. You are just carpet bombing the entire map with all of your cities. We can apply this concept to an account. This can mean you have a whole bunch of units at NP1. Hull, on the other hand, in Civ is, I am going to instead only have maybe a handful of cities, like let's say 3 to 4, that I hyper fixate on and make them super invested in. And so what we would call this in FGO is that same sort of deal. It's like, maybe I'm going to make my Tiamat really strong. Maybe I'm going to make my Draco really strong. Maybe I'm going to make my Castoria Berserker really strong. Maybe I'm going to make, I don't know, my Melisson really strong or something like that. And they're going to hyper fixate on those units. They're going to roll multiple MP levels of them, and they're going to rely on them to handle 99% of the content for them. Why? Because they can, and they have determined that they will spend less money doing this than trying to roll a singular copy of every other unit out there. So this is where you see, again, this gravitation as FGO has begun to trend more towards this. This is largely due to, again, the power creep that has gone on in the game. People have realized that there is more value in doing this and going after the insanely strong units rather than trying to play Pokemon and gotta catch them all. They understood in the past that niches were super important, and the more units you collected, the more niches you covered. Now what they see is an incentivization by the devs to disregard niches and to go after pure strength, because the developers have not been incentivizing niches anymore. They've also been making units so strong that they overpower the niches to a degree. And that has caused major design issues. And it's why, like, I say this, but as you focus on, like, let's say the 4 strong units and you whale them to NP5, they get a temporary injection of cash. Then with every other banner, you do not roll. And they go, I now get no money off of this. So in the long run, it actually results in less net money for the developers than if they convinced you to otherwise roll NP1 of every unit in the game. This is why I say Oberon was a mistake for them. They actually hyper incentivized that focus and that desire to just get a handful of really strong units. And it's cost them, and it will continue to cost them until they rectify that. How do they rectify that? They buff other units to be as strong as these units. Basically resetting things a little bit. And I think that's kind of what they're going to try to do. But I think they're just kind of caught between a rock and a hard place. You can never achieve perfect balance in a game with this many units. Instead, you have to just try to get more of the roster online and hope that you eventually get enough that the banners will sell themselves again. Well, this does cause problems. Hasn't that fixation always been the case, though? I still remember reroll till you get hurt. Yes, however, and I'm gonna go ahead and say this. Fixation due to preference of, like, hey, I just really like this unit. So again, like NP5 space Erish. Sure, let's rewind. NP5 space Ishtar. Why did people NP5 space Ishtar? Well, part of that's because that was actually where some of this began. Space Ishtar was one of those first units that people started to look at as a neutral looper that could be a one-size-fits-all solution. She wasn't. Like, there is no actual one-size-fits-all solution in the game. But there is something to that. It doesn't mean that people wouldn't have rolled strong for her because she was a Ren face, because she was popular. They would have. But it does mean that that's where, hey, this started to become a thing, and it's only gotten worse since then. I think if you go back prior to that, NP5ing a unit was mostly just a sign of endearment, and you didn't really have the gameplay argument side of it, if that makes any sense, right? Like, people weren't, back in the day, NP5ing units usually purely due to the strength of the unit. I'm going to say, like, whales did, but the reality was most people NP5ing back then were NP5ing because they just really liked the unit. It started to change as we started getting into more standardized metas. So away from things like Waver and more into like Scotty, Castoria, obviously going in Skya and stuff onward. I think that's where we start to see that mental shift. It is partially due to the fact that the game has structure at that point, and they can actually point to that and go like, hey, you know, this is going to be really, really good if we do this. But it's also due to the fact that, again, instead of this one-size-fits-all solution of like, hey, let me just roll this one unit. In the past, we did have more niche-friendly gameplay, and this idea that covering more of the niches was better for you. So, again, building wide used to be the great idea, and this is where FGO was built. This is where FGO made so much of its money, was that it, and I'm going to go ahead and say this, and this shouldn't shock any of you because most of you have heard this term before. FGO is a waifu collector game. Always has been. So the fact that we're getting away from that and incentivizing more just collecting a handful of waifus instead of trying to collect as many of them as possible tells you we've had a strategy shift behind the scenes, whether they intended it or not. You don't want to have a perfect copy? Yeah, I mean, like, I'm not asking any of you guys to, like, justify why you've done that, right? But I do think that's an issue. I think that's actually a problem. Let's take a look at the rank ups here. I do have some that I need to get done. Actually. And so, by the way, chat, with regards to using Scotty more, guess what my NA is doing? Damn, it's wild that I have to scroll that far to find a Scotty with a Bond CEO. There we go. We'll just do this. Should work. Land grab the game. Yeah. So, like, again, I think, like, new channel. Yes. Yes, this is the new VODs channel. Basically, the idea is that that shift, I think, is making it more difficult for them to monetize units. However, and allow me to say this. This is coming at this purely from an analytical top-down player perspective. Would you like me to shift into the developer perspective for you guys right now? I can do that for you, and I think you'll find it interesting, at least. Sure. So, with regards to developers, if you want to think like them, if you want to know why they have made this shift, it's actually pretty easy to diagnose. Think about it this way, chat. How do you convince me to roll for a new unit? I'm somebody that's been playing the game pretty much since the beginning. I have 90% of the roster. Saberface, Blonde Booba. Well, okay, me specifically, sure. But, like, I'm saying more or less someone like me, right? Got my account recovered? Hey, nice. Congratulations. If you're trying to sell it to a whale that already has every option under the sun, there are two ways you can do that. Allow me, chat. Way number one, the way all of you are saying. Literally make it something that I would goon to. That simple, right? If you make a unit that's absolutely up my alley, I'm going to roll for that unit. But what if I don't? What if it's not something that I like? What if anything, it's something that's off-putting to me? How do you get me to roll? Yeah, now you have to make it meta. You have to make it stronger than all of the units that have come out prior to it. It has to represent a leap forward. This is why there's power creep. And because of that power creep, this is why you have that hyperfixation on a small number of units. Because some of these units are just head and tails above the rest. Why are they head and tails above the rest? Because the developers realized they needed to do that to keep selling copies. That's what the developers realized they had a problem with. The longer a player plays the game, the more units and the more options a player gets. As a result, how do we get the player to continue to spend money on the game? The only solution is to keep making units that are stronger than the prior existing ones. Because you can't always count on the design winning people over. You hope that it does, but it logically will not win every single one. Wait, did I go into... Okay, it just switched to Lancer Hero. Wait, did I take Lance? No. No, it was Saber in the prior one. I'm not insane, right, chat? I'm not insane. You know what? We're not going to do that. We're going to get away with using him because I can. Oh, crap. Hey, you know what? Why not? There we go. That'll work. You're just mostly insane. It's true, right? Is there any reason why FGO does not have a search by name option? I don't know, because I completely agree with you on that. When we have over 400 units in the game, it is kind of wild that we don't have a solution like that. We do have filters at least, so we can definitely filter it down to like, hey, do you need this specific unit? Well, what if you can't remember their name? It's more like, well, I need somebody that has taunt. Well, I need somebody that has guts. Well, I need somebody that does invuln pierce. Well, I need somebody that's quick and has invuln pierce. Like, that's why the filters are there. But I do agree. I think they could add more features to make it more, like, intuitive in that regard. You're outsane? I see. That's kind of Oberon to me. I didn't really like his design. Figured he would just be a different I would just get a different AoE pretender. Then everyone was talking about how he breaks the game, so I basically had to. Yep. And yeah, like Oberon is a actual example of that. Like hard example of that. Usually, like even with something like a Melisande or a Tiamat or a Kukulkan, like you don't have to roll them. You can actually avoid them, and you're not like worse off for it. But what you do start to see is some of these higher end nodes do feel like they're balanced around it. And then it becomes difficult because like then you do feel like you're missing out. And that's the pressure that the devs want you to feel. They actually do want you to, again, roll the gotcha. So they're trying to get you to feel that way so that you do roll it more. But it is like if you've never thought about it from the developer perspective, that is why they are doing what they are doing. If they don't power creep, the game would eventually die because nobody would roll for anything. At least not gameplay wise, right? And they would start making less and less and less money. So that's why they do power creep. My issue isn't that they power creep. Power creep is, I think the way to think about power creep in a video game like this, a live service model, is it's sort of like inflation, right? If you imagine inflation, it's supposed to just kind of creep up over time. It just is supposed to like be like that. Now, meanwhile, the actual world economy's inflation has been like that, but like it is what it is. In FGO's case, you could say that power creep is supposed to be very similar to inflation. The units should just get marginally stronger over time as they are. The problem that we have is that occasionally we have, I'm almost going to say like, it's almost like looking at like a seismograph or like looking at a heartbeat monitor where it's like, oh, hey, yeah, what happened? Bloop! 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 And then you're like, wait, what just happened? Like, why did that unit go so fucking hard? That's my biggest issue with it, is it's not that there's power creep. It's that there are clear examples that you can point to where they got stupid with the power creep. They again, like with Oberon, you can look at him and you can just go like, you could literally carve out half of the third skill and he would still be broken. Still. So like, why did they make him that strong then? It almost causes them problems when they do this. Because the issue at play is, again, chat, do you roll if this is your graph do you roll for this unit? Or do you roll for this unit? Now, taking out any freaking bias over appearance and character, you're going to roll for this unit 10 out of 10 times. And that's pretty freaking obvious. Whereas you're not going to roll for this unit 10 out of 10 times. So the only reason you see people rolling for the unit that is not the insane power creep is because they just really like the unit. They really like the character and the design. People are rolling the power creep units, though, for both reasons. And that's exactly what happens. So this means that they make way more money up here and way less money down here. To me, it's better instead to trend it more even. This results in you constantly making more money as opposed to having brief spikes of more money. Oh, did the dance not work for her? That's really weird. I'm not sure why. There we go. I can at least make her manually dance for you guys. But yeah, I think like this is why like I bring this up. It's apparent to me that this is why the developers are doing it, and where I'm criticizing them is not for having power creep, it's for the gravity of the power creep that they have had. Some of it has been legitimately like, wow, I can't believe they actually did that. Like, hey, you could have made this half as strong and it still would have been a unit that everyone rolled for, type deal, right? Yeah, it looks like the interactions there are not working, and I'm not really sure why. Also, she's doing the thing where she migrates off the screen again. I don't know why she does that. The squirt, I don't know if I can manually redeem the squirt. Yeah. Can't contain her? Never could. She loves to cha-cha slide stage left. I don't know why she does it. Only certain dances do that. And, like, it's really weird. Because that one in particular just makes her slide right off the screen. And then, you know, she's gone. Yeah, I think it's just that she's broken is why. So let me reload it. Oh man, it does not like that. Give it a second. I gotta wait for the program to close down. Chat, I'd like to get to banner review though. I've done a whole heck of a lot of talking. So let's I've gotten my AP ticking on an A. Let's we'll pick up where we left off on banner review, but I also want to talk about the pre-release campaign for the new event. Oh my god, dude. Dude, some of these programs just do not want to freaking close down. Okay, you're probably going to get white screened for a second, chat. My apologies. Banner review for who? I literally do a review for all the upcoming banners for the year. Because again, like I've told you guys before, I don't put out like I don't put out like here's the units to roll for video. I just instead go like, all right, I'm gonna review every fucking banner. And it is what it is. You guys can decide for yourself who to roll for. There's my white screen. Okay, so what do we have here? I'm a big boy, I can choose for myself. And that's usually what I like to do. I think like the content creator business in general is designed to like tell you guys how to think and tell you everything to do, whereas I just try to educate you and let you choose for yourself. It's what makes me a shit content creator. Because if I were a smarter content creator, I would absolutely not tell you how to do any of these things. I don't know. I think it's probably got something to do with my mother and how she was a teacher for years and how like I just instead try to like teach people things. If that makes any sense? All right. Chat, we literally have a new limited event coming out. Again, it's slated for mid-January. I think you can expect it pretty quickly after the anniversary campaigns wrap up. Basically, they've already given us some bonus servants, of which, again, like you have Medusa, who's a snake, Liz, who's a dragon, Liz, who's a dragon, Kyo, who's a snake, Lambda, who's a dragon, Medusa, who's a snake, Liz, who's a dragon, Dobrynia, who's a dragon killer, Medusa, and technically rides a dragon, right? Medusa, who basically is a snake again, Liz, who's a dragon. This is Sieg, who is a dragon killer and a dragon himself in theory. Shuden, who's a snake. Asclepius, who's a snake. Cleopatra, who liked to use snakes and technically has a robotic snake in her FGO iteration. Shuden, who's a snake. Chiome, who's a snake. Kijo Koyo, who is a dinosaur / dragon. Kiyohime, who is a snake. Gorgon, who is a snake. And Eliza, who is a dragon. So again, there's just like a ton of crap going on with that. Bro, that is an interesting picture, Ash. I just want to know who that hobo in the back is that you picked up. Anyways. So like people saying like, oh, well, there's like a snake theme to this. There is. Again, we are headed into the year of the snake. I think we are coming out of the year of the dragon. So like, I don't think it's any like shock that this is a theme. Other than I wouldn't just assume that it's immediately going to be like related to this. There are numerous possibilities for like who could be involved with something like this. I think I do have a guess. I'm not going to tell you what the guess was. You'll just have to trust me on whether or not I was right in the end, and I will tell you whether or not I was right, but I'm not going to tell you for spoiler reasons. Basically, you cannot know about who my guess is unless you have actually, like, you know, read the JP story or at least experienced it. I'll give you guys a hint. If you've experienced one of the events. But again, we'll just have to see basically what goes on with that. It looks like they'll increase their attack power as well as the amount of bond points they can gain. Even if a servant is eligible, they may not appear in the main scenario of the event. So that's another thing, right? Just because there is a theme to this doesn't mean that this is what the event is about. And again, just because someone appears here does not mean that like they'll actually be part of the story. And then let's see. So they have, hey, there's a pre-event campaign, special login bonuses for January here, just giving you some fruit and a singular quartz. They once again showed you that increased bond gains for some event bonus servants, basically for the week leading up. So maybe we can assert that the event will start sometime around the 15th. Oh yeah, I guess there is a New Year's campaign, so a couple of the units have overlap with it. Again, strengthening quests are half consumption for the units that are featured here. And that's really all that there is. So it is interesting. I will say, I really hate that JP doesn't seem to get like a catch-all half-cost strengthenings and interludes anymore. It's only for like specific units at specific times. But again, I don't anticipate too much for this event. I don't think it's going to be a lotto. I don't think it's going to be a raid. I think it's just going to be a straightforward, like, normal event. And it'll probably be reasonably chill, because I suspect that the developers, again, have a whole lot of crap that they're trying to get done, plus a whole lot of crap that they just did. So I'm not going to say this is going to be like a phoned-in Chaldea Boys event, but I wouldn't expect it to be like the most robust of events in terms of its like requirements and mechanics. No Ibuki? That's very true, actually. Yeah, no Ibuki there. So again, like, you can look into it how you will, but there's definitely a couple characters that would be, or at least should be, considered for that. So usually, again, the lists there are not complete. They instead give you some sort of like, again, like, here are my bonus units, but they add in the actual event unit and then maybe even other units that would be a dead giveaway for who that unit would be. So it's entirely possible that the bonus list that they've given us is still going to have more people added to it when the event actually comes out. Okay, let's start event review. Actually, hold on, let me send that in P here real fast. I also can't steal too much thunder from Valentine's. Yes and no, right? Like, we definitely have robust events that occur in January, irregardless of Valentine's. But I think the bigger concern is that they probably just want to make sure that they're able to do both events. So, like I said, given the products that they just put out and the fact that they just doubled up for events there at the end of December, I think you're going to see that they're actually going to make sure that they do, you know, I guess, like, I think this will lead to them doing less in this event. If they don't, good. That's just actually a good sign. If this is a fully fleshed out event with, you know, like new mechanics and stuff like that, it's actually a really good sign that they managed to pump out all of that content in such rapid succession. So you can't join us? Well, that's fine. I mean, like, I totally understand comparing beards, but none of you actually have a beard. Y'all have facial hair, okay? Anyway. Where did we leave off yesterday, chat? We were in May, was it? We finished Ilya's Castle. I think I went over the Nerofest campaign here. I talked about Advanced Quest Part 15. I think this was the bone one. Yeah, okay. I think I did. So I think it was literally June. Oh, right. Yeah, so I think we got all the way through the Paper Moon chapter release, right? And we got through all of these. Downloads campaign, my wife. All right, let's continue. Hey guys, we're going to pick up right where we left off for banner review again. So we had completed talking about the Paper Moon chapter release here in June. Now do keep in mind that this is likely to occur in May for NA, probably mid-May. And basically each one of these summoning campaigns we've kind of already talked about. So we're going to go ahead and start off here with the 28 million downloads campaign. As you guys can see, again, just going to get some nice stuff from this. Basically get the login bonuses, the limited daily mission reward supplement as well, getting some teapots per day, and the master mission bond point gain missions here. So this is really an interesting thing because you can see they have an incentive to gain 100,000 bond points during this period. It's actually pretty easy to hit, doubly so because you have the teapots. Now, not to get too political on you guys here, but especially with Ordeal Call, the Storm Pod nodes coming out, this has definitely been something I've noticed. The developers are really trying to push you to bond. If you think that sounds odd because you get free quartz from that, it should. It's a little bit of a developer trap at this point. Yes, obviously there are benefits to bonding, but the developers kind of want you to bond out some of your more used units so that you roll more. This is something we've been noticing over time. They have made statements to such a degree, at least, maybe not as direct as that, but basically telling you like, oh, if you've hit bond cap, we're not going to be extending the bond cap, just roll more units. So you can kind of tell that's what their angle is with that sort of thing. So I do think, obviously, with regards to teapots and the overall efficiency of the Ordeal Call nodes going forward, just be careful with who you use. Remember, you don't technically have to like 3-turn those nodes. If you want to try to like use other units that you don't frequently use, or you want to try to like use a friend support, but don't use one of your own meta supports, and you maybe try to find other alternatives to that, it's definitely a smart way to handle it, as you'll be able to bond up more units that way, and you'll also avoid kind of bonding out some of the units that you might want to save for things like a lotto or something where you want to be efficient. You can see they did refresh the Da Vinci Mana Prism Shop exchange for this, as well as the Rare Prism Shop exchange, and they added a new permanent CE to the Da Vinci Workshop, Beyond the Rain Cloud here. This one is basically an increase to the friend points gained when using a friend support by 5. This will go to 25 at MLB, and Mystic Code experience. There are a couple of these that come out. I'm going to say they're not the worst thing in the world because, again, at MLB, you're going to get 5% of the various effect here, as well as 25 friend points. Going to be kind of the ones that are going to be coming out this year. They're going to repeatedly use this sort of mechanic, and they're not terrible. They can at least be something where it's like, hey, I'm going to gain 5% of an effect, and I'm going to gain, again, like some additional FP. But it may just be like this is one of the only ways that you can kind of get more of this type of thing. Like, for instance, Mystic Code experience. Let's say you already have like 4 different CEs equipped for that. How do you get a 5th one in? Well, it's going to be by taking one of these CEs, and they're not the worst thing in the world to take. I don't think they need to be anyone's really first purchase, but again, we'll talk about that more when I actually remake my Mana Prism and Rare Prism shop guides. Some other campaigns here. Again, bond points gained for Ember Gathering and Treasure Vault are increased. Ember Gathering is going to be half cost, as well as every version open. Treasure Vault is going to be half cost during this time, so if you guys are needing to restock on QP for whatever reason, remember you will have already had a lotto at this point, but you will also had things like Ordeal Call come out, so it may be to your benefit to kind of restock here, but ultimately it's up to you. You can see they add Artoria Ruler as an NPC, and then basically you're going to get a 2 times success rate for Great and Super Success during this campaign, as well as all interludes and strengthenings at half cost. I highly recommend taking advantage of this because, again, you don't get very many of these days where all interludes and strengthenings are half cost. So this is probably going to be one of the last ones you'll ever get. I highly recommend getting all of them caught up and done during that time period if you can. You can see this is where they added a new filter feature for existing craft essences. I think NA already has this, so it's not too big of a deal. And then there is a summoning campaign. A summoning campaign that's very near to my heart, given, as you can see, all the saber faces in it. So just taking a quick look here at the rate up craft essences, you can see poolside bar here is going to be your 5-star. Realistically speaking, it's okay, but the split stats don't really make it something you want to invest into. Ladies and Gentlemen's actually kind of a sneakily good one because it's a 4-star CE that is actually a crit star bomb when you first enter the field. So this one can have some uses if you're looking for a crit star bomb that's not a 5-star CE, maybe saving you a little bit of party cost at the expense of some stars. So it can be at least a decent option for you. Looking at the rate up servants here, again, just talking about them since they're pre-existing. Artoria Ruler is a really interesting unit. I do think she needs some help in terms of the damage department. She has gotten a couple of buffs over the years, and it has helped her out quite a bit with her overall usability, but I do think she squarely needs like an NP interlude or a fix to her charge skill at this point. Either one of those could potentially help her out, but basically, at this point, her NP damage is really not why you're going to go after her. The reason to go after Artoria Ruler is because she's actually a very nice crit support. You can shuffle the cards and basically reduce the available cards in a given deck down to only 2 of the units in the parties rather than all 3 of the units. This does allow you to eliminate a unit's cards and then reshuffle and see what you get. This can make it very easy to form Brave Chains, Mighty Chains, you name it. And again, it comes in conjunction with a party-wide 50% crit up, which in a double Koyanskaya setup, or really any sort of setup that you could maybe get back to it in, is going to result in 100% extra crit damage for the entire party. This can be really nice. It can allow you to easily farm certain nodes that maybe have annoying enemies if you can get the right cards on the right turn. Thankfully, she's very consistent at doing that, so it can be a really good solution for you to try out. Ultimately, she's not a unit that a lot of you guys have to have, but she is a really fun unit to use if you understand her major gimmicks and how to actually put her to work. Okita J Soji here, on the other hand, is actually a very demerited unit. That being said, her damage performance is not too bad. She's another limited summer unit, so you're going to have a hard time getting your hands on her. She is a 4-star AoE quick assassin. And sorry, I didn't say it earlier, but Artoria Ruler is a 5-star AoE buster ruler. But Okita Soji here being an AoE quick assassin is definitely something that's suspect. She actually can loop. The biggest issue is if you do need cards to sort of complete that loop, she can stun herself on the back end for NP, which can be a little bit nasty. That being said, ultimately, just to actually refund, the stun never gets in the way purely for that. So you can still loop with her, and actually, due to some upgrades that she'll be getting, she is going to become a Black Grail looper, and definitely an interesting one at that. So yes, she's not going to be the strongest AoE assassin. Yes, she's not a unit that you have to have, but she can be a decent option for you, and she can be made to 3-turn even with something like Black Grail, provided that the node actually does allow for it. Taking a look at the summoning campaign number 2 here, you can see we get all different Cs. Midsummer Moment's actually not too bad. It's all attack scaling. It's quick up of 10%, critical damage of 10%, and 3 critical stars per turn. You probably don't need the critical stars per turn in a quick comp, but hey, it is what it is. It's definitely a decent option there. And realistically speaking, nothing else here that kind of strong. Looking at the actual campaign itself, you've got Maid Altar. Now, Maid Altar is another limited summer unit. So again, getting your hands on some of the summer units, can be kind of difficult. It can be rough to try and actually get them outside of devoted summer banners. Thankfully, each year we have a tendency to get at least a banner for some of the summer units. It's just you might not see all of them in it. So there's no guarantee that you're going to see the one that you want to see, particularly when it comes to the 4 stars. The 5 stars usually appear pretty frequently, but the 4 stars often don't. So it really just depends on how the developers try to run things. That being said, looking at Maid Altar is still a unit that does a metric crap ton of damage. The issue that she has, she doesn't really have that self-charge. She doesn't really have that self-survivability. So she can be a little bit unwieldy for people to use that don't really understand her. But she does have cooldown memes, and what I mean when I say that is that she can actually double up her 3rd skill without really like a Koyanskaya setup or anything like that. So it does allow for her to do what we like to call the reloaded meme. That can result in her getting a lot of damage on, again, basically wave 3, or now with the 5th append, potentially as early as wave 2. So you can get quite a bit of firepower out of that. The biggest issue, as we already mentioned, is her overall usability due to lacking charge and lacking survivability. But you can at least get good card performance out of her. She can refund back to full if you get the right cards and you get the right crits. Still not necessarily the most consistent of things to try and do. So again, Maid Altar, very good for damage, but could probably use a buff at this point in time. We'll see what the devs do with her in the future. Mysterious Heroine Double X, kind of already talked about. Again, she's a really decent option as a single target arts, basically foreigner there. She can be a decent unit for you due to the fact that she has charge, she has the threat against humanity niche, and she basically actually has some survivability built into her kit. Unfortunately, it's tied to her steroids, so it is what it is, but she can be a decent pickup for you as yet another limited 4-star summer unit. Looking at summer campaign number 3 here, we've got another really, really interesting one. And this one actually has a rare craft essence that is quite valuable. This is Knights of Marines. If you're unfamiliar with it, this craft essence is a CE that can be pretty decently sought after due to the fact that it is one of the rare all attack scaling quick craft essences that actually has charge. So at MLB, this actually scales up to having basically 60% charge, and you can see 15% quick up. This is definitely a really interesting one. Yes, if it were a 50% C instead, it would probably have even greater effects, like it might have like an NP damage up or something in addition to the quick up. But it at least is going to be a decent option for you as an all-attack quick scaling CE. So it is one of those deals where if you have a unit that would function pretty well with it, maybe a unit that has like 20% self-charge and then a maxed out append, or maybe 30% self-charge and just an unlocked append, they can easily start with this CE and get themselves to full without having to use their Scotty's charge skills right away. So this is a really nice CE both for starting charge and potentially pumping damage. So a lot of people do try to kind of pick up a copy of it at least over time. You don't necessarily have to get it, but it is one of the better options that we have out there for quick still to this day, which is kind of wild given that it is a CE from the original summer event. Taking a look at the rest of them, nothing really too much to write home about, but I will say, taking a look at the units on Raid Up this time, we definitely have some interesting ones. Now, I'll start here with Surfmo instead. Surfmo is actually the game's second highest refunder. She is a limited 4-star AoE arts writer, and she absolutely loops like crazy. So much so that double Castoria usually has her looping over 200%, not even really requiring Castoria in order to pull this off. The reason why is because Surfmo was one of the game's original loopers. She looped long before Castoria ever existed, which means that she's designed to work with far less supportive meta supports. And as a result, this does make Surfmo an extremely good refunder, even when the waves are not including 2 or even 3 units. You can just instead have a single unit in some cases, and Surfmo will still loop over it. Now, the interesting part about Surfmo is that what she has in refund, she somewhat lacks in damage. This is why a lot of people will turn to a unit like Habitrot now that's, again, a welfare that's guaranteeable that can kind of out-damage her. She's certainly still a really fun and easy-to-use unit, so she can be an interesting pickup, especially due to her rarity. A lot of people don't find her to be an easy unit to acquire due to, again, her being a 4-star limited summer unit. But she can be a decent option for you. Just again, watch out for the damage if you're going to have low NP levels of her, but otherwise she's still very, very serviceable. Squirtoria, on the other hand, is a unit that often gets me in trouble, and that is to say that I am of the opinion that a lot of our single target archers have been somewhat left behind. They're getting their niche overrun by units from outside of their class. And this is basically due to the fact that the developers have not actually given them NP interludes. I believe that Squirtoria could get an NP interlude and it would not break the game. The reason that other people get me in trouble over that and yell at me over that is because people feel like Squirtoria is very strong still. And that is the truth of the matter. Squirtoria's kit has never been in question. She is the game's strongest looper. So it's interesting that the game's second strongest and the game's strongest are paired together on the same banner, but there's a reason for that. They both came out at the same time during Summer 1. Both of them have also had their rates tweaked a little bit due to them being a little bit underperforming back when they released. So as a result, they are both looping monsters. That being said, Squirtoria can absolutely sit there and loop right over the top of a lot of bosses. She is a single target arts looper, and she is somebody that is really designed for the challenge content. She doesn't necessarily have the highest damage output, but it's not really going to matter because you're just going to keep NPing again and again and again and again. And without even really trying that hard, my record for Squirtoria is making her NP 12 turns consecutively in a row. So that should tell you already just how strong she can be, even when her buffs fall off. So again, it is a rather interesting unit to have. Her primary mechanic, and the thing that you should really be interested in for her, is the fact that she can drain a boss of charge. It's not a guaranteed effect, but it does have a 70% proc rate. So if you're just constantly firing off NPs every turn, odds are you can keep depriving the boss of actually getting to their NP. So much so that even in a turn where you maybe realize that they're going to maybe get the NP off, you might be able to stun them, get Squirtoria back to her NP for the next turn, and then deprive them again. So it can actually be a very hilarious thing to do. And again, it's one of the reasons that people feel Squirtoria is still so strong, despite her being a year one unit. So again, should you roll for Squirtoria? I think she's a unit that everybody should kind of consider, but you definitely don't have to roll for her. She is an older unit at this point, but ultimately, at the end of the day, the choice is yours. The 28 million downloads campaign has a lot of saber faces. It has a lot of summer units that can be rare or hard to get, but you are headed towards a new summer event for the year. So again, you're just going to have to make a tough decision in that regard. Taking a look here, we did get the Strange Fake Whispers of the Dawn broadcast commemoration campaign. I'm not sure if NA will get something like this. My mind is telling me probably not, but who knows, we may get something else similar to it, at least to get the commemorative CE. You can see they did unlock some of the interludes for the unsummoned servants, particularly Gil and Enkidu. What this means is that even if you do not have these units, you can still do their upgrades preemptively, which will mean that they will be already done should you roll the unit, but it will also mean that it will count towards any milestones that you have, so this can just get you a lot of extra quartz basically by doing them. So the general consensus is, no matter whether or not you intend to roll the unit, always make sure you do the interludes and strengthenings if they are made available to you for that reason. So whether or not we get it, I don't know, but we'll just have to see. You can see this is where we got Advanced Quest Part 16. I don't remember if this is when we get an MLB of any of the craft essences. We can just double check right here. It is not. You don't get another MLB until 17 and 18. All right. So now we move into July. Remember, this will logically be somewhat June, because basically right here, the Mystic Eyes Symphony, as you can see the time date on this, if you're familiar with when NA normally has its, again, anniversary, you can expect that this must occur before that point. So even though the start date is pretty much right when NA would be celebrating, the entire 3-week event must move ahead of it instead. That's a little bit of a problem. The reason for that is because it includes a new unit, Saber Medusa, so that does mean that it has to move ahead of it in order to not mess up the GSSR for NA's anniversary. Again, we'll just have to see how they handle it, but I think you can expect that this event will end up coming out a little bit sooner in that regard. In fact, just real quick, let me glance over at the roadmap, and yes, they said this is supposed to come out early June. So with it pretty much taking 3 weeks, it will take up all of June and lead pretty much right into the anniversary. So you can expect that this will happen a whole month earlier in that regard. Again, we already talked about, well, actually, we didn't talk about the actual summoning campaign here, so let's go ahead and mention it. This was in conjunction with that. It does mean that NA then will probably get something for this, maybe not right at this time, but it may happen at a different date whenever they decide that they wish to commemorate Strange Fake. But you can see here, this is a banner for Gilgamesh and Enkidu. We've already kind of talked about Gilgamesh, and I believe we've talked about Enkidu, but if I haven't, I'll just go ahead and mention that Enkidu is still a very, very strong permanent single target Lancer. Enkidu is known as sort of the SSR cockroach of the family. If you're unfamiliar with what that terminology and jargon means, it means that Enkidu is very hard to kill. Enkidu is a very tanky character, and yet the devs still made Enkidu do a whopping ton of damage. So Enkidu is a very, very strong unit in that regard, can be very good for challenge scenarios, as well as just generalized boss killing. Also has the threat against humanity niche, so can be very useful in certain specific story fights, and definitely somebody not to be ignored. Gilgamesh, on the other hand, still really strong, still applying pressure on every other archer in the game, and it's pretty blatantly obvious to see why, due to his synergy with the likes of Oberon, and again, him just being anti-servant. You can see the rate ups here, just again, pretty much straightforward, nothing too much to write home about. There are no rate up CEs, there are no 4 stars, nothing else here. So again, if you really like either of these units, you can go after them, but they have, I believe, already had other banners in the year. Next up, we have the Evocation Festival Part 3. This will definitely be another interesting one, as it's going to be the return of some highly sought after summer units, particularly Jerker, as I like to call her, John Alter Berserker, Hokusai Saber, and again, OG Shisho Assassin. So basically, each of these is going to be a popular unit, or a unit that people were not able to acquire because they're from the earlier days of FGO. You can see there is a new strengthening here that's going to give Shisho Assassin basically an upgrade to her critical damage for 3 turns. It's going to increase her own damage against Divinity trait, which is a new effect that she didn't prior have. And it's also going to give her a 30% charge skill. This is definitely nice, as this does allow her to become a much more fluid looper, whereas prior to this point, she pretty much was relegated to starting from, you know, again, like just barely maybe like a 60 or 50% charge standpoint. This makes her a lot easier to use. So definitely a unit that you guys can consider for an AoE looper as an assassin, but I'm going to tell you again, the Valkyries are probably still a better option for those of you guys that have already acquired her. Taking a look at the actual summoning campaign, and again here, let's actually first talk about the other welfares that are here. So John Alter Berserker is infamous for having at least very strong single target damage. She's a single target buster berserker, and she can do quite a bit. She has 20% charge baked into her kit and at least a little bit of survivability with a dodge per turn mechanic. Her biggest problem is the fact that she has anemic health, and she further drains it even more. So it's something you really got to watch out for when you use her. Damage is not the issue, survivability for her is. And Hokusai Saber is a single target arts looping saber. She's actually pretty decent in terms of how much she can pack a punch, and she can be a really solid option for your single target saber. So if you're somebody that really doesn't have a lot of options there, highly recommend picking up Hoku Saber. She's one of the better welfares in the entire game, and she can be a decent option for you. Summoning campaign now, we can take a look. This is actually going to be the return of OG Shisho. OG Scotty. OG Scotty is a really interesting unit in the sense that we have a new summer form of her. A lot of people, I think, maybe think that it replaces her. The reality is triple Scotty comps are a thing. They are better for certain units. And there is also the benefit of, again, original Scotty just having that survival NP rather than an offensive NP. That could be really useful to people. She also worked pretty well with her summer counterpart, since her summer counterpart gives quick up, but instead gives buster crit. Her original version here gives quick up, but quick crit. So this does open up more options for potential carding and critting should the need arise. Again, it's up to you to determine if you actually want to go after her, but she is a meta support, and she is somebody that you could rely on to that capacity. Again, I do think the performance out of maybe her summer version is a slight bit stronger, but it's ultimately up to you to determine who you want to get. My advice, get both of them so that you have multiple options, and that way you can also not have to rely on a friend support potentially should the situation disallow it. Theo Lancer is here as well. She's another single target, sort of rarer Summer Lancer. Her biggest issue is that really she doesn't have a whole lot to kind of write home about. She doesn't really do anything wholly unique, and she's kind of underwhelming in terms of that performance. She can definitely be serviceable. You can use her and amplify her damage to still make her decent. But the issue at play here is I feel like most of the other single target 4-star Lancers are somewhat better than her to some degree. So to me, I don't really advise it, but if you do like Kiyohime, feel free to go after her. John d'Arc Alter here is, again, another highly sought-after unit. She's one of the game's original waifus, as I'll say. Not necessarily on launch, but very quickly into the first year, a lot of people were really, really gunning for her. She basically caused the Jalter apocalypse, as a lot of people will remember, where a lot of people quit the game originally because they could not get a copy of her since the gacha in original FGO was quite nasty. So... again, she is a unit that people still to this day are chasing, and she is still one of the game's premier damage dealers. She is an Avenger. She's single target buster, so that does make her a little bit on the neutral side, but she is a unit that can still absolutely pump damage. And this year on NA upcoming, she will get a 50% charge skill buff, something that she definitely can use and something that she can really pop off with. So there are going to be other strong Avenger candidates to combat her, but she is definitely going to enjoy that upgrade. Queen Mabe Saber here is, to me, a unit that is in dire need of an upgrade instead. I don't really feel that her performance is altogether that good. She does rely on landing her defense downs in order for her damage to pop off. She is serviceable in that regard, but I think she's kind of outperformed by quite a bit of the welfare sabers. She is, again, going to be an arts single target saber. To me, my advice, go with the welfare from the Evocation Festival rather than trying to get a copy of Mabe Saber. But if you do really like Mabe, feel free to go after it. She's definitely a hot character and definitely a hot unit. Hokusai, the original here, is, again, a 5-star AoE arts foreigner. She has had some issues looping over the years, but her damage has really never been in doubt. I think she kind of has gotten passed up in that regard, but she still has the man niche and still has quite a bit of a kit in order to kind of amplify that damage due to her ability to place defense downs on the enemy with her third skill, assuming you get her arts cards. Still, Hokusai, definitely a very strong unit should you use her right, and definitely a very pretty unit. Has one of the more beautiful NPs in the entire game. Osaka Behime Archer, also another unit that probably needs an upgrade. At this point, I don't really feel like Osaka Behime Archer does anything to write home about. She does have a unique mechanic where she will actually taunt you to attack one enemy, but that's really not to your benefit most of the time, so it just is what it is. I don't really feel like her damage is there. I think she's actually one of the worst archers in the entire game. She definitely could use some love. I hope the devs actually give it to her, because I do think, design-wise, she's a very cute and fun unit. Taking a look at the schedule here, you can see Kyo Lancer is paired with OG Scotty. You can see Jalter is paired with Mabe, and you can see Osaka Behime is paired with Hokusai. It really almost feels like they're using the rather underwhelming performance 4 stars to instead be sort of mitigated by selling them with a much more popular and sought-after 5-star. It is what it is, but that's kind of what they're trying to do, and it was also their way of trying to bring back some of those summer 4 stars that they have made difficult to acquire over time. So again, that's going to be the summoning campaign for the Evocation Festival there. Now we get to talk Mystic Eyes Symphony. Now, just a brief blurb about this event. This is a tower event. If you've never done a tower event, what that means is you have a sort of, as we like to call it, an onsen mechanic. The onsen mechanic is like basically whenever you use a unit, they go on cooldown. So this is a type of event that incentivizes you to have a lot of units leveled up. If you're hearing this now, understand you have about 5 to 6 months to rectify any sort of issue that you might have, but you definitely should start leveling more of your roster and getting more units online in preparation for something like this, because how many units you have leveled up dictates how fast you can complete this. Thankfully, it is a 3-week event, but it is a 200 floor event, so every single floor is going to make your units go on cooldown. They will cool down faster if you put them in the quote onsen and you pair them up according to what their synergies are. Again, it's usually, I believe, a 6-hour cooldown, and it can be reduced to a 4-hour cooldown if you put them in the appropriate one. So if you have enough units, you can kind of string it along, and you can actually get back to the point where your units are coming off cooldown by the time that you're actually able to kind of do more nodes. But ultimately, at the end of the day, like I said, the number of units that you have leveled up is going to dictate how fast you go through this. That being said, the bone to pick that I have with this event is the fact that in a weird part, basically, I think it's after either floor 50 or floor 100, all of the units that you are facing in every node are a servant. What does that mean? Well, it's interesting because basically everyone makes a cameo, but it's also annoying because everyone makes a cameo. What does that mean when I say that? It means every time you go into a node, if you've ever noticed, FGO has a unique mechanic where the very first time you go into a node, it quite literally will stop and zoom in and show you each one of those servants. This particularly happens usually on wave 3 of a node, if you've ever noticed it. This will happen every single node, every single floor. So you're going to have these nodes not go by very fast. It's kind of a small gripe, but it is a gripe that I found quite annoying, as this actually made this the slowest tower event for me ever to complete, which is kind of wild because I've completed numerous ones before this. It's just an annoying mechanic that I feel like they probably should have suspended that feature for, but it is what it is. It doesn't make the event bad, it just makes the event take a little bit longer. Ultimately, at the end of the day, though, still a fun event overall. I am going to say, kind of looking at this, the summoning campaigns are going to be interesting. So right off the rip, you can see we got a new servant here, Saber Medusa. Let's go ahead and let's talk about her. So Saber Medusa does at least have some decent attack power. She's a single target quick saber. And you might be thinking like, oh, well, Saber Astolfo exists, Okita exists, like I maybe already have options for this. Maybe I use Caesar or something like that. But Medusa is going to bring something to the table that you haven't seen before. So for starters, she also has the triple quick deck. She does have at least decent HP. And then as we go look at the skills, she has a chance to petrify, which is again just like bound, another unique version of stun. This does mean that it will not be impacted by normal stun resistances and things like that, though magic resist and stuff like that can still kind of counter it. Gonna increase her own critical damage with quick cards for 3 turns, grant herself a buff on attack that whenever she will attack with quick cards, inflicts curse of 500 damage for 5 turns to the enemy. Again, this is a rather interesting feature. Don't mistake the 100% petrified chance with totally guaranteed to happen every time. Like I said, units with magic resistance or debuff immunity can absolutely put a stop to it. The quick crit damage here, though, is strong at 50% and will synergize quite well with Scotty or Summer Scotty. Her second skill here charges her own NP gauge by a whopping 50%. So right there, she's already differentiating herself from the other options. You're going to charge the party's, increase the party's attack for 3 turns by 20%, so a standard charisma there, and increase the critical damage of demonic allies for 3 turns by 30%. Her third skill here is basically going to grant herself invincibility for 3 attacks 3 turns, debuff immunity for 3 times 3 turns, and her own critical attack chance resistance for 3 turns by up to 30%. You really only want to level this one more for the cooldown rather than anything else. But again, you can see there is a whole heck of a lot of survivability built into this. This is a very, very nice skill. And again, just a brief thing to denote, she herself is not demonic, so you're not going to gain the demonic allies benefit for herself in that regard. The thing I would like to call attention to is her NP. It is a 9-hit single target quick NP. It deals damage to one enemy. It deals super effective damage to enemies that are man attribute, and it has a 40% chance to petrify them for 1 turn. It will also increase the attack of allies that have the earth attribute by 20% for 3 turns, which she does. So this will include her as well as any other unit in the party at that point in time. From there, her overcharge effect increases her own quick performance for 1 turn, activating first by 10%. And the thing to take away from this is due to the 40% chance on the NP, as well as due to the, again, effect of the first skill here having a 100% chance, you can kind of stun lock enemies as you loop over them. This is something that we actually see later in the year again, but it is an interesting thing that they started it kind of with, Medusa here. But I do really feel like Medusa Saber can be a very good option for you. Her damage is quite solid, and again, that ability to potentially keep looping and stun locking enemies can be also pretty nice. So it's up to you to determine if this is a unit that you need, but I think a 50% charging unit to that degree is almost never going to be bad. You can definitely make her perform quite well. She could be a Black Grail looper for you, and she could be a unit that really does have decent card performance due to the nature of her deck and her kit. So ultimately, at the end of the day, you can decide whether or not to roll for her. I, for one, will be, but it's up to you. Again, it's going to depend on your role priorities if you need a single target saber, and again, the proximity to other banners, especially if you're free to play. All right, so taking a look at the craft essences that are going to be available on Rate Up. Sweet Blood here is an Ignore Invincibility, Arts Up, and NP gain up of 15%. Definitely not a bad one. Could stand to have a little bit more in the arts department. I'm sure at MLB this goes up to like 5 or 6%, but still it could use a little bit more firepower. Still, it's going to be a decent one for at least NP gain. Flower of the Sun, nothing really to write home about, and Be Shelved, nothing really to write home about, although it is a rare CE that has a sort of minuscule amount of starting charge. The summoning campaign for the second one is going to include Kyokute Bakin, a AoE arts writer. She is a limited unit. She does actually have a pretty decent kit. I do think if you're somebody that's like rolling around with Habitrot, you probably don't care too much, but Bakin can do some interesting things, particularly with her middle skill. She's got it on a targeted basis, and it has a ton of steroids baked into it, including a tricolor buff. So it is a rather nice skill to have. It does make her a little bit like variable. She could be used to take out a node herself while buffing someone else, or she can be your devoted looper. It's totally up to you to determine if that's something that sounds nice to you. She's basically the dog whisperer of FGO. So again, it is another interesting unit to have, but ultimately your choice as an older unit. Hessian Lobo is going to be the other 4-star here. A lot of people overlook Lobo, but for a lot of people, Lobo is actually their best single target Avenger. A lot of people don't realize that that he actually does do quite decent damage, and he does have death procs. His biggest issue is his overall survivability and his ability to kind of keep getting back to an NP. Ultimately, though, you can set him up for success if you put him in the right comp, so I do think he is a very serviceable option, as he is a rare single target option for the 4-star Avengers. Same CEs there, so nothing too much to worry about. Summoning campaign number 3, we have the return of Huyan Zhou. So, again, apologies if I butcher her name, but basically Huyan is a very interesting AoE quick assassin. To me, she's the game's first AoE quick assassin of the SSR variety. We did just get Kashin Koji, was it? Earlier in the year with the Ilya Lotto event. And again, she is going to be at least a sort of like foil to her, because to me, I feel like Huyan Zhou is a little bit more usable, has a little bit more of a straightforward kit. If you like Kashin, feel free to go after her. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's really going to come down to, do you actually need a quick SSR AoE assassin? You might feel like you do. That's totally up to you. Again, I do think she's very serviceable in that regard, but I would like to see her maybe get some love. Her big thing that she has is, again, her ability to kind of have her niche in play. Again, as you guys can see here, she has the evil alignment that she can kind of deal with. So that can help her out quite a bit. And so I do think she can be a decent option to go up against, some of the other competitors for the AoE assassin category. Huang Fei Hu is basically nothing to write home about. He's a permanent single target buster rider. He's serviceable, but to me, really doesn't do anything noteworthy. I don't really feel like most of you guys should be rolling him for other than collection purposes, but totally up to you if you really like his design. Summoning campaign number 4 here is going to be a little bit of a doozy. We get the return of Miss Crane, who is a very, very solid unit. She is, again, a interesting one in the sense that she facilitates sort of plug suitless party swapping without killing anyone. So that can have its value, especially in challenge compositions. She can also make the units hit harder when they do. Balbon Sith is yet another story-locked single-target quick archer, and she is a rather good one, with her being a 60% charger that has the ability to skill seal enemies. She also has invuln baked into her kit, and again, a drain with her being a vampire. I do think she is a very, very strong single-target archer. Up to you as to whether or not to go after her, but she is usually a unit that does receive a lot of banners. Medusa as a 3-star is what it is. She's a decent AoE option, but she's not the hardest hitting, but she does at least have a little bit of charge in there. Galatea, we already mentioned and talked about back during the Valentine's event, so I'm not going to talk about her here. Gorgon is an interesting buster AoE Avenger. She has at least got okay damage, but she doesn't really have any sort of loop ability. Thankfully, they did finally give her some amount of charge. It's not a whole lot. You can forcibly 3-turn with her. I don't really recommend it. But again, a lot of people like her just based purely off of her design, so if you feel like going after her, feel free to do so. Medusa Lancer here is at least a serviceable single target Lancer. We were talking about Keo Lancer earlier in that regard, and I feel like Medusa Lancer is a better option in comparison to her. She is single target quick, she can loop, and almost like her Saber form, does have the ability to sort of stun and charm lock enemies, kind of locking them down. Her damage is okay, her refund is okay. Her biggest issue is she doesn't really have charge, so to speak, to actually get back to it by force. So you're going to have to rely on good card or, again, proper support to get her there. Vitra, we've already mentioned before. She's actually a pretty decent AoE arts Lancer. Sathino. So Sathino is a permanent... I would call her AoE, but she's really not. She is a permanent support assassin. That is to say, she doesn't have a damage dealing NP. She has a death procking NP, and that can death proc some fodder enemies. But ultimately, to me, her biggest use is actually as a little bit of a sort of kind of in the same way as like Liz Lancer, sort of a pseudo support that can be used to buff divine allies. And that's where she kind of gets a like doubled up charisma to that degree. Urael, still a very strong single target arts archer. I know you're looking at her and thinking, what do you mean strong? She's a 3-star. Yeah, she's still a very strong single target arts archer, particularly against men. So again, you guys can see the rate ups here, basically the pairings. It's definitely an interesting one, but we'll just have to see, again, if this is something that you guys actually want to go after. To me, I don't really recommend any of these. I don't think any of them are strong enough to really warrant you rolling out of turn. But if one of them is a unit that you have your eyes set on, feel free to go after it. Just keep in mind, we are getting very close to anniversary now at this point. So from there, that is the Mystic Eyes Symphony. We'll have the 2900 days anniversary. That's usually just some additional courts. And then we get the actual anniversary pre-release campaign. So again, all of this will probably be occurring now in like late June, early July. And you guys can see the pre-release campaign for Anniversary is going to get you quite a bit of stuff. As usual, Anniversary does have a ton of rewards. The issue here is that some of it is a start, dash, and comeback campaign that you will not be eligible for if you are continuing to play the game. We basically also got the wrap up and celebration of the final episode of Fujimaru Ritsuka Doesn't Get It, but I believe we did get season 2 of that as well, that finally just finished right now on JP. We did get some memorial quests for this. Again, remember, memorial quests are going to be how you get your tickets that are going to allow you to pick from one of any number of amazing craft essences. Again, you're mostly after the art of these Cs. They don't really do very much for you gameplay wise. So a lot of people like to collect them just based off the cool designs. We will go over that when we actually do a proper anniversary video. But again, I'll just kind of gloss over it for now. I'm not going to look too much into the memorial quests. Again, you can see the rewards were pretty much what was already displayed. Anniversary Cs are right here. Again, you usually can pick 2 of them. As we mentioned, you'll get the tickets from doing the memorial quest. There's a damage high score event. They always put this on. There's no actual reward. This is just bragging rights. So feel free to participate in that if you so choose. There will be a summoning campaign for this. So you do have Moriarty. I believe I already talked about Moriarty. He is a very strong single target archer. He's Buster. He's 50% charge. He has the ability to change all of his allies into evil attribute, which can be useful depending on what you're trying to do. Leonardo da Vinci Writer is sort of the game's premier arts looping writer at this point, at least when it comes to party support. So Da Vinci Writer can not only herself automate a bit of the looping process, but also help charge her allies up to full. She can be very useful in sort of scenarios where either, again, you're looping her over all 3 waves, or potentially you're trying to get somebody else charged up to get to their NP. The biggest issue that she's going to have, though, is damage output. So again, just be careful about that sort of thing. If you want to go after additional MP levels, it can definitely help you out. And then there is going to be your timings, though again, remember, this will be subject to change on NA due to the date differential. And let's see, they did put out the soundtrack for the 4th edition at that point in time on JP, and they did reveal some of the summer units that were going to be upcoming at this point in time. All right, so with that, now we have the actual proper 8th anniversary. Just to talk about this again, there are going to be the 10 great campaigns. I'm going to gloss over it a little bit, but I will give you a little bit of a teaser here. So again, you can see the cumulative login bonus that gets you some nice rewards. The Destiny Order summoning campaign will be back. And again, you can see the amount of trolling that they're doing with who they featured on this. Little did people know at the time, but basically the beasts have been left out of every normal GSSR ever since they've been released. So realistically, they've only been available on Destiny Order campaigns, and that has been a little bit of a problem that people have highlighted, especially since Draco herself did not get a whole lot of banners. We do get a lucky bag summoning campaign, aka normal GSSR. I'm not going to really go over that with you guys because, again, to me, that's less of a banner and more of a choose your own adventure. Again, my advice, at least that I can give you, is always roll GSSRs. If you're going to spend any money on the game, they are the cheapest that you will ever really be able to guarantee yourself an SSR. So in that regard, it's very much like bang for your buck. That's how I usually choose to approach it. Even as somebody that wails on the game and has a ton of the units already, it's still at least the option to maybe get additional NP levels. Or heck, maybe even a USO. Not that anybody likes really getting USOs. So again, Lucky Bag Summoning Campaign, highly recommend. Basically, for the 4th campaign here, you have the Anniversary Master Missions, as you guys can see. Some decent quartz to be gained from that, as well as main progress count missions. So again, if you have cleared any of the story chapters all the way up through these, you will literally just get credit for them. If you've already done them all, you will already have all these basically unlocked for you. If you haven't done them all, you will have to complete these in order to get all of them given to you. But you can see there's quite a bit of quartz there, up to 30. And then they also incentivized you to unlock a class score sign in order, in other words, to start using the class score system. If you did that, you got even more quartz for doing so. The 5th campaign was basically main story clear missions. Again, 30 more quartz basically for 6.5, 7.1, and 7.2. Servant strengthening quest, they updated the milestones to have greater amounts since again there were more strengthenings that happened over the course, so they added 40 more courts for that. Basically, they upped the interludes only by 10, and the reason for that is because they really did not do very many interludes. The free quest clear missions, basically for clearing all of the free quests that are available, they gave 30 more for that. And then here you go, your next big incentive: clear all of your advanced quests. You don't have to do this now, but this was the devs realizing that people were absolutely sitting on them and not doing them. So they started adding in this incentive. You can see clear 48 advanced quests is the top thing there in order to get the last reward for all of that. But there's quite a bit of courts there. There's also going to be one for class score unlock. Again, the more you do in the class score, the more you're going to get here. This will be difficult for people to get automatically right off the bat. Some of them, if you guys are on the cusp of things, you may be able to get them all. But again, other people will probably be lagging behind and not have as much progress on their class scores. Remember, their milestones, you'll keep getting them even if you don't already have them complete. You'll get them over time whenever you do complete them. There'll also be half cost... Great and super success chance up of 3 times. All daily quests being half cost, with again every type of field being open for Ember Gathering and training fields, and also the Storm Pod Bleached Earth quest being half AP. This is where I think they finally realized that this was a good idea to do, and they started working this in, as JP now does half cost Bleach Earth quests during every event that they run. And this is because I think they realized that people were not doing their storm pods during events because people didn't want to spend the extra AP. So definitely, I hope that's something that they implement early on NA. We'll see what they do in that regard. But again, this is just sort of an AP saving feature because I think they realized people wanted to do, again, the other campaigns here. They didn't necessarily want to spend all of their AP on the storm pod nodes. The 7th campaign is the update to the Mana Prism Exchange. Basically, this is when they started adding back old craft essences that previously had been unacquirable. So as of anniversary this year on NA, you will finally be able to purchase things like Golden Sumo again that you maybe wouldn't have ever had the opportunity to if you are a newer player. So you can definitely see some interesting stuff there. You've also got a new monthly renewed inventory for the Mana Prism Exchange after you clear the Ordeal Call Prologue. What does that mean? That means if you haven't cleared it, these won't be available. If you have cleared it, you will now be able to buy a singular faux pas as well as a single copy of both HP and attack gold foes from the Mana Prism shop. This is absolutely great news. The problem is this is absolutely going to skyrocket the number of mana prisms that you need in order to be able to purchase this every month from the shop. Be very careful with how you use your mana prisms. This is one of the reasons why when I was doing the things they could improve for 2025 video, I talked a lot about mana prisms and how there's actually a huge drain and it's very difficult for new players to be able to purchase everything. Again, this is one of the reasons why. So it's a nice thing to have, but it's definitely going to put an increased strain on players. However, this is the one change that they have made. As of this update, you will also now get mana prisms every time you summon in the Quartz Gacha. What does that mean? You will not get it from FP summons. You will get it from Story Banner, limited banners, you name it, but not from FP. So again, you can see 5 mana prisms are rewarded for every quartz that you summon, for a total of 50 for a multi-spin. So definitely another thing to denote there. Again, you can see the reward is auto-redeemed. Players don't have to go to like the mailbox or anything. It just literally, it'll show you at the very bottom whenever you summon that it's there and it'll give it to you. So definitely some nice stuff in that regard. Basically, it says no mana prism is awarded if the player's mana prism inventory is full. I'm not even aware that there is a cap to mana prisms. If there is one, that's wild. I wonder if I will ever hit it. But basically, you can see summoning with tickets doesn't give any mana prisms, so be very careful about that. And the +1 bonus summon, according to them, also does not give one. Tutorial summon, Destiny Order summon, and Lucky Bag summons, however, do give you the mana prisms, so there is at least some benefit to that. Looking at the 8th campaign here, you can see basically permanently main story quests will be half cost now until LB7. In addition, again, you will have limited time Spirit Vein stones that are going to get added. So again, the blue prisms basically. And they've also, at that point, they basically added them to the Mana Prism exchange shop. But again, these are timed, so realistically speaking, nothing too much to write home about. The 9th campaign is going to be the storage slot expansion for just normal storage. So servants, craft essences, and command codes are all going to gain 50 to 100 slots. And basically, the second archive will also have a purchasable version for more mana prisms that will increase the number of slots for both servants and craft essences by an additional 100 slots. The 10th campaign is just your servant strengthening campaign. It is going to be the next thing on the list, but we're going to talk about some of the other stuff, particularly your anniversary servant that's going to be coming up here. There will be a trial quest for her, and you will obviously have at least a singular ticket reward for that. The Da Vinci Workshop as well is going to have some limited time items that'll be in addition to its normal stuff. So again, you guys can see some of it does have the requirements for the Ordeal Call prologue clear. So that is going to be an issue. And again, just the normal Rare Prism Exchange, as well as they will be permanently updating the Rare Prism Exchange to now basically say that, again, part of the Rare Prism Exchange inventory will become free of charge when conditions are met. So basically, some of these old craft essences, they're now saying, hey, you know what? We realized this is stupid. Players really need some of these CEs. If we attach a rare prism cost to them, players are not going to be able to get them very easily. Because again, free-to-play players don't have an easy source of rare prisms. They can eventually get them without necessarily like burning a higher rarity unit, but it usually takes them a little bit of time, or they have to wait and get lucky from a campaign. So what this does is this makes, while they do still require the rare prism, it will instead be free or refund it to you once you fulfill the conditions. If you want Chaldea Lunchtime, you just have to clear Fuyuki, and then it will basically put it automatically, well, sorry, not automatically, it'll basically make it free cost, rare prism wise, for you to unlock. Then once you unlock it, you'll still have to pay mana prisms, but it won't have that rare prism cost associated with it like it did in the past. So again, clearing story gets rid of the rare prism unlock requirement, though you still will have the mana prism unlock requirement for all of these CEs. Definitely a nice thing. I certainly like this. This gives players even more reason to do story, but ultimately it is what it is. Players are going to complete story at whatever pace they can kind of manage. Couple of game updates here. This is literally when the 20% starting member bond point bonus came into effect. I criticized this one. I still disagree with it to an extent. This to me made the devs' intention of trying to bond out your most used units very obvious. And the reason why is because it only impacts your starting line. If it instead applied to units in the back line, this would have actually been more beneficial to the masters, and it would have allowed us to backline bond units faster. Instead, now we are bonding the units we use faster, thereby making it so that we hit the bond caps a lot quicker. Yes, it does result in more quartz force in the short term, but in the long term, it results in you being less efficient if you don't change your units around or summon more units, which is what the devs' intention is with this. Basically, you also have a servant list function to sort by rarity at that point. You also have class group options. Again, I believe NA has all of these already. They did also update the extra mission UI here. But yeah, again, I think that's all the updates really had for that. We already talked about the pre-release campaign, so we don't have to talk about that. Let's talk about our summoning campaigns. So first up here, we do have some rate up craft essences. They won't be rate up for Destiny Order. And actually, yeah, okay. So there are rate up Cs and then there are new CEs that are being added that are not on rate up. So they're just added to the permanent pool. You basically have a new version of Vessel of the Saint that's debuff immunity 3 times with arts up. It's at least a decent option if you manage to have it. And again, basically here with Chasmatis, or however you say it, Chamatis, you have an all attack scaling starting charge with overcharge and NP gain. So again, like kind of like demonic Bodice Vada to an extent, but really a interesting CE. I do think it could be a useful one if you have an overcharge gimmicked unit, but otherwise not something you really have to have. Meanwhile, the unit on rate up is another honorable mention for one of the stronger units coming out this year. Now, when Ace came out, this caused a lot of commotion, primarily because a lot of people did not expect her. That is to say, this is Morgan Le Fay, just in a sort of different alternative form. That is to say, if you've read LB6, and I don't want to get too much into spoilers, you're going to definitely see that there are some other things going on here. But a lot of people were not expecting this rendition of the character to actually be released, and it also ends up being your summer version of Morgan Le Fay. So this caused a little bit of commotion because it meant that for the first time ever, our anniversary unit was also a summer unit. And this definitely made people kind of go like, what the heck? You know, I can at least understand some of the criticism because really only her third form is the swimsuit form. So this does cause you to not really get a full like summer variant of the unit. Instead, it's kind of halvesies with anniversary and summer. And so at that point, I do understand some of the criticisms there. Irregardless of any of that and how you feel about the unit, I can at least point to the gameplay of the unit. You see, Ace the Savior is a very strong AoE caster. In fact, the game's strongest AoE caster to date. She has 11.8k attack, only 13k HP. Again, you can see a double Buster deck here with double arts. She is a Buster AoE caster. Taking a look, basically, at her, you guys can see her active skills. She starts out by charging the party's gauge every turn for 3 turns by 10%. Definitely just a nice little easy way to automate charge. She'll gain critical stars every turn for 3 turns, up to 10, so pretty much a fragment of 20-30 right there. She will charge her own NP gauge 50% right off the rip of activating this skill. This makes her a 50% charger, and then she will increase her own NP damage for 3 turns by up to 20%. This is something that again can be further boosted by Oberon. All of this on a 7-turn cooldown. The hilarious part is she's actually gotten stronger now thanks to the inclusion of the 5th append. So the fact that this can now be reduced even further to a 6-turn cooldown means it can operate conventionally twice in a double Koyanskaya setup, turning her into a Black Grail Looper. And that definitely makes her strong in that regard. Her second skill here is a little bit of a doozy. The way I would choose to think about it is basically the less health she has, the more attack she gets. So she's going to increase the party's attack for 3 turns and then further increase the party's attack dependent on basically how low their HP is. The less health, the more attack. So again, you can see it's base 20%, but then it scales 10% when each of these sort of benchmarks of 25% are met. Basically, just by virtue of putting a Black Grail on her, you will be guaranteed to get at least the 99% one. So again, there is some interesting value here. All of this on a 5-turn cooldown, meaning you can get back to this skill very fast, effectively. Her third skill here is an interesting one. It is one of the more unique skills in the entire game because, as you can see, this skill starts on cooldown for 5 turns. That is, when you first enter the node, you will not be able to use this skill right away without doing things. It will literally have a 5-turn cooldown. Why? Well, for starters, because natively it's a 10-turn cooldown skill. So, needless to say, you're not going to get back to this skill a second time, probably, at least not in conventional farming. Maybe in a challenge scenario where the node goes on over time, but not very quickly either at that point. So it's going to start with a 5-turn cooldown. It's going to charge the party's NP gauge by how much, you ask? By 50%. This is a party-wide 50% charge. And it is very strong. It's going to increase the party's NP damage for 3 turns, further by 30%. This means that Ace has 50% in her kit, NP damage up, and then grant the party gut status 1 time for 3 turns, reviving at 3000 HP. Now, the thing about this is, with a 5-turn cooldown, especially with the 5th append in play, you can very quickly get back to this. You can quite literally get this by pretty much the 2nd turn, should you choose to double Koyanskaya, the node. So again, a lot of really easy to get buffs and charge here. Just keep in mind a couple of notes. You can see the forced cooldown can be reduced by normal cooldown reduction, so you can get to it fairly quickly. And again, the NP that she has further reduces this as well. So the standard cooldown takes effect after you get and pop the skill the first time, but it starts on that 5-turn cooldown, making it really strong due to the fact that it is just a busted skill in a nutshell. Taking a look at her Noble Phantasm, it is a 5-hit AoE buster NP. It will also grant herself invincibility for 1 attack, 1 turn, activating before damage. It will then deal damage to all enemies. It will then deal extra damage to any enemy that has evil alignment, and this actually scales with her NP level. This is not an overcharge mechanic. The more copies of Ace you get, the more this goes up. This is a super effective modifier that scales with NP level. It is disgustingly good in that regard. It's going to reduce their defense by 20% for 3 turns, activating first, and then basically it's going, or sorry, not activating first, activating after. So the more you NP against an enemy over and over and over again, the more likely it is to actually, again, like, be able to make her hit harder. The more you're going to be able to pump damage, basically. Hold on, chat. Sorry, my dogs are howling. They think it's time to go out, and it's not. Basically, her overcharge effect is going to increase her own buster performance for 1 turn, activating first. Again, this is 30%, which is a strong overcharge mechanic, and it's going to reduce the cooldown on her 3rd skill, specifically by 1 turn each time she uses this. So pretty much already after turn 1, this will go down from 5 to 4 automatically. It will go down from 5 to 3 due to the NP. And then from there, you're pretty much the double Koyanskaya pop away from achieving this. If you can get cooldown reduction from any other source, 1 Koyanskaya would be enough right there off the rip to get back to it. So you can see this makes Ace very strong. She is a absolute monster just due to the scaling of her kit. She is worthy of the designation of an anniversary servant in that regard. So don't let people scare you off of her due to their feelings about, should you have a summer unit at anniversary or not. Regardless of that, she is the strongest AoE caster currently in the game, and she definitely scales well and has still held that at least at this point in time. We'll see if anyone passes her, but should you consider getting her? Yeah, she's strong enough that you should consider getting her. Do you have to have her? No, you do not. Some of you guys may be relying on a really robust like Ku caster, or again, maybe just somebody else like Caster Umu or Da Vinci. You name it, it's perfectly fine. But Ace is definitely going to be a good solution to certain nodes. So it's up to you to determine if she's someone you need to have, or if you feel like you can get the job done with other options that are out there. To me, personally, I do recommend rolling her, but it's up to you to determine whether or not you have the courts to spare right there. The second summoning campaign is going to be the return of, well, just a lot of units. It's just kind of par for the course at Anniversary here. So you can see we've got the Trung sisters, who are a very strong single target Art Saber. They're actually very good at sustain and keeping the party alive, which makes them pair very well with the likes of Castoria, who does not really have sustain in her kit. So definitely a very strong option for you. Interestingly enough, even though they have quite a bit of healing and party support, they actually still hit like a Mack truck when it comes to being a single target Art Saber. So they're very strong even in the damage department as well. Mama Lancer definitely in a much better spot now that they gave her an actual buff to her third skill, giving her the charge. It definitely helps her out. She still needs an NP interlude if you ask me. I don't really necessarily recommend rolling for her unless you're a huge Tamamo fan, but she can still be a very serviceable option due to the fact that she's Buster. Constantine, as we've already mentioned, I believe earlier, but I'll just kind of briefly mention again, does get a nice buff that actually does allow him to be a lot more usable. He's not going to be, again, the end-all be-all or a unit anyone has to have, but he can be a lot more fun to play now that JP actually did give him some attention. He went from being one of the worst SSRs to at least being a usable SSR and somebody that can be fun in defensive and challenge scenarios. Space Ishtar is still very strong. She has actually been surpassed by a lot of the other SSR AoE Avengers in terms of damage output, but it doesn't really matter because she's sort of a Swiss Army knife. She can change her card type to whatever she wants it to be with her NP. She's still a 50% charger. She still hits really hard, and she still scales really well. So ultimately, the fact that other units have outdamaged her doesn't really matter. She's still a very good option for you. Taira no Kagekyo is still a really strong and hard-hitting single-target Avenger. She's single-target quick. She has a ton of survivability. She will get outpaced by Jalter, especially after Jalter's upgrade, but ultimately, at the end of the day, Taira is still a very, very difficult-to-kill unit, so excellent for challenge scenarios. Super Bunyan did finally get a buff recently on JP that helped her out. This definitely helps her stand out in the face of a unit like Melt, but admittedly to me, Melt is still the stronger option. So whether or not you go after Super Bunyan is up to you. She is a limited unit that probably doesn't receive a lot of banners, but ultimately at the end of the day, I don't really necessarily recommend it unless you just are really a huge Bunyan fan. Van Gogh is, when we're talking fun units to use, she is absolutely the epitome of that. She is a stun-locking, crit-happy, technically arts NP, but I'm going to say quick-centric foreigner. She really likes to card, she really likes to crit, she really likes to lock down enemies, but definitely not a, like, sort of meta unit in that regard. She's still just a very fun option. I do recommend checking her out. You don't have to roll her, you don't have to have her, but she can be a valuable tool to your Chaldea if you use her correctly. Fran Saber is a limited 4-star from Summer. She definitely could use some sort of attention in the way of a buff at this point. She's actually extremely loopable due to how much NP gain she has in her kit. She's single target quick, but ultimately at the end of the day, I feel like she could use maybe a little bit of bump up either in the automative processes like straight charge, or again, maybe even something in the way of damage to help her compare against some of the other Sabers. Saito Hajime is a very loopable single target Art Saber, definitely an option. I don't really find his damage to be altogether that good, and he is going to have some stiff competition with some of the other welfares that already exist, but he can be a serviceable option for you if you like him. A lot of people like to refer to him as Virgil due to his outfits. So again, if you like Devil May Cry, he may be a unit that's just for you. Calamity Jane is an interesting unit. She is a single target quick archer. Her damage from her NP is not altogether that strong, but what she lacks in that, she makes up for in sort of unique party supports. Especially with her third skill, she can provide buff success chance. So it does make her at least a little bit unique. She is, again, another fun unit to use, but not necessarily a meta unit by any stretch of the imagination. Alter Ego Lambda, aka Melt Lancer, Melt Summer, if you will, is another limited AoE arts unit here. She is a decent option. Her damage is really her biggest issue because her fluidity of looping is absolutely great. Again, she has at this point kind of gotten some stiff competition in the way of Percival, who is a permanent unit. I can definitely say that there are a lot of Melt fans out there, and they will absolutely attest to her good performance. But again, damage is probably going to be her biggest sort of problem. Daiko Kuten, do not overlook the 4-star AoE Black Grail looping caster rats. You might not think much of them because they are quick, but they do have fluidity in their kit and a very easy to use sort of setup that does allow them to start from 0% charge and does give them a little bit of staying power even if the node throws a wrinkle or two at them. So I do actually really like Daiko Kuten. They're one of the better 4-star AoE casters, if you ask me. Ushi Wakamaru Assassin here is going to be a little bit of an odd duck. Actually, I should say odd flamingo due to the way that she stands. But essentially, she is a 40% charging AoE quick assassin. She definitely doesn't have a whole lot of firepower in her kit, but she's absolutely a phenomenal star generator, if that's something that sounds great to you. People have called her the 4-star Jack before, and it definitely fits in that regard. But I will say, ultimately, at the end of the day, her primary niche is her ability to remove offensive buffs. It's ultimately an okay niche. I'm not going to say she's a bad unit by any stretch of the imagination, but to me, she could probably use a little bit of a damage upgrade at this point in time. Say Shonagon Berserker can actually card pretty hard. She does have a triple buster deck, even though she's a single target quick Berserker. I do feel like you basically go crit meme or bust with her. Her damage, to me, is ultimately not her strongest suit, other than for carding. So again, it's up to you to determine if she is a unit that you really like, or you maybe prefer other less Genki units, as I like to call it. She's a very happy-go-lucky type of character. And again, you guys can see the overall breakdowns there, as well as the craft essences that will still be in play. So here is going to be your banner timings for all of that, and your pairings. The lucky bag, basically, as we already mentioned, I'm not going to really go through and break it all down for you guys. You can see you do get 12 banners divided by 2 groups of 9 female and 3 male banners sorted by their year of release. That's going to be how it's going to work. It does use premium currency only, as usual. And again, it just kind of is what it is. So pick your poison. You can see there are other, again, options here with the males, but basically, I'll go through that when we actually do something for anniversary. The Destiny Order is also going to be another one. It costs even more premium currency than a normal GSSR. But what Destiny Order is, if you've never seen it, is a GSSR where you can slot in the units that you wish to receive for each class, and you are guaranteed to get one of them. You will probably not get multiple, but again, you get to choose which units are possible for you to get. So this can be a really nice thing for you to target certain units. My advice, don't have buyer's remorse. Don't put a unit into one of the slots that you don't actually want, because I see people do this all the time, and then they complain that that was the unit that they got instead of the other unit that they really desired a whole lot. To me, Destiny Order is still a great tool. People just have salty grapes, basically, over, again, like, not getting the things that they actually wanted. So that is going to be FGO's 8th anniversary in a nutshell. NA's 8th anniversary, I'd say. And we do have the Servant Strengthening quest. Just to very quickly talk about this, this is basically going to be when Salter is just going to become an absolute nightmare of a unit, as she will have, again, the scaling basically with her Buster Up. Bradamante definitely gets a very nice charge skill here. Again, this is when Mama Raiko is also going to get her 30% charge and really sort of come into her own. Again, Karna gets his 30% charge here, so he no longer has the scuffed 25%. This is going to turn her into the Black Grail Looper that we've been mentioning. Again, Anastasia's finally going to get some cooldown reduction and at least some benefits to her charge skill, including an additional arts up to give her some more firepower. Kiyohime Lancer stops, I'm going to say, stops being as bad and at least gets some attention. She could still use more. I hope they do give it to her. Basically, Summer Abbey definitely gets some attention, just kind of improving her overall damage. It is one of the criticisms that people had for her. And then day 7, Oddly enough, they decided to give the best looper in the game 30% charge. I'll take it as a Saberface fan, but that was definitely one of the upgrades that I went like, what? Okay, sure, why not? And again, Gawain got his NP interlude there. So overall, a very well-received set of strengthenings for the anniversary, but not necessarily like the ones that people thought were going to happen or the ones that people were maybe looking forward to. So there was at least some contention overall with that one. Taking a look at August here. Again, we are now outside of NA's roadmap, so we have no idea when any of this stuff will occur. You can expect some of it will probably slide forward a little bit. There was a Learning with Manga Volume 4 release campaign. Really nothing too much to write home about. Whether or not NA gets anything for this, I don't know. We might get something where they serialize it into English, or again, maybe they'll just hand out the craft essence, or maybe we just don't get it at all. We did get the summer event here, and this is when Nocnaria is going to become available. This is basically the event that everyone referred to as LB6 Summer. So if you're unfamiliar with what that means, well, I'm just going to go ahead and tell you, you should go read LB6, because if you haven't read LB6 by this point in time, you will get spoiled by this event, and they will kind of warn you about that. Again, the clear requirement is only Fuyuki, so you don't have to do too much in order to access it. But needless to say, this will deal with a lot of themes that were present in LB6, so I highly, highly, highly recommend it, that you go read. Again, I'm not going to go too much into it. It is a normal summer event in every way, shape, and form that you can imagine. We are going to focus over here on the summoning campaigns. So for summoning campaign number 1, you have one of, if not the most sought after unit this year, aka Artoria Caster Berserker. I know that's a mouthful, but it's because Castoria, this is her summer Berserker form. Don't ask me why they chose this naming convention. I don't really get it. To me, they should have chosen some sort of like meme name, but it is what it is. I like to call her Zerktoria, so from henceforth, this is what I will refer to her as. Look at the rate up craft essences here. You do actually have a decent one with Dazzling Moon. It's critical stars every turn, Buster up, and Overcharge 2 stages for 1 time. Again, the artwork here is phenomenal, but otherwise, nothing too much to write home about the rest of these CEs. Taking a look at the overall units here, I'm going to have to talk quite a bit about Artoria Caster Berserker, aka Zerktoria. Zerktoria is strong for a couple of reasons, and there is, again, a reason that everybody is pretty much looking forward to this unit. She is just a total monster when it comes to both charge and damage. She is a single target arts berserker, so that already should clue you into, oh god, this may get really broken. So she has over 12k attack, still an anemic level of HP. This actually may be the lowest of any 5-star. I don't know. I'd have to double check. But again, as you look here, you can see the NP gain rate might leave you going, oh god, that's not too great. Well, it doesn't really matter. Hit counts are actually very solid. And you're going to see real quick, based off the kit, why she is strong. She will increase her own critical damage for 3 turns by 50%. She will increase her own critical star absorption for 3 turns by 5,000%, which is enough for a berserker to actually soak the stars. She will then charge her own NP gauge by 50%. So right now, we've already established she's a single target arts berserker with 50% charge. That right there is just strong right off the rip. Her second skill charges 1 ally's NP gauge. She has a targetable charge skill of 20%, just like her caster form. And again, it's going to overcharge their NP by 2 stages 1 time for 3 turns, which means when you inevitably use this on herself, she will gain this benefit herself. It's also going to further increase the party's NP generation rate for 3 turns by an additional 20%. So she is now a 70% charger with overcharge and NP gain. Her third skill is going to improve her own arts performance for 3 turns by 50%. It's then going to gain herself 10 critical stars every turn for 3 turns. It's then going to grant herself invincibility for 1 turn. Realistically, this invincibility is one of the least used aspects of Castoria. And you'll learn why here in a second. So, the 50% steroid, if that wasn't strong enough, let's keep going. Looking at the NP, she will grant the entire party. She has a 6-hit single target arts NP. It grants the entire party solemn defense for 1 attack, 1 turn. So I say, like, the invuln is actually not going to receive that much use because the entire party's getting solemn defense every time she NPs. It will then deal damage to 1 enemy. It will then deal super effective damage to threat to humanity enemies. It will then further reduce their critical attack chance by 20% for 3 turns, making it less likely that anybody even does get a crit off. But even if that were the case, by the way, she does have a unique passive that stops you from being able to really have a good chance of critting her already passively. So stacking that with this effect is going to make most units just incapable of critting her. At least not without some sort of stacking on their own end. But then we get to what actually does make her broken. Her overcharges. You see, Castoria Berserker has 2 overcharge effects. 2 50% power mods against Chaotic and Divine. And let me tell you just how many bosses and servants and things fall into this. Oh my god. This has been one of the most used units for me for general purpose boss killing or high node farming because of these effects. These are very, very pervasive traits to have. And again, they are both 50% power mods. They can both stack with each other for, again, additive scaling right there. And then basically, due to the overcharge, they can each scale up. If you remember, she has a 2 ranks of overcharge 1 time for 3 turns. She will have kind of base 75% against any enemy she's trying to kill due to this second skill. So yeah, you can make Castoria Berserker absolutely nuke units from orbit. It's hilarious. And again, due to the 70% charge and the fact that she's an arts unit, she is pretty much brute forceable in any scenario. This is insanely strong due to that. And we didn't even mention the fact that, again, she does have 20% from mana loading. So you can pretty much get her 0 to 100 with very little outside investment. Castoria Berserker ends up being just one of the strongest units in the entire game at this current point in time for this. This is a unit that every single one of you this year should be considering, should I roll for this unit? You do not have to have this unit, but this unit will make your life in FGO easier. This unit will perform well for you, no matter the NP level that you get her at. And that is definitely something to be said, that this unit is a strong unit. Again, I'm sure if you basically go out there and you ask anybody which units they're looking forward to over the coming year, Castoria Berserker will be one of the units that gets mentioned again and again. So as we mentioned before with certain other units, I cannot stress enough that you guys should consider rolling for this unit. It is my recommendation to do so, and not just because I'm a Saberface fan, but simply because of how useful and how strong this unit has been. In fact, as an anecdote for that, I had to try to stop using her because she was bonding so fast for me that I was worried that I was going to run out of efficient ways to use her very quickly. So I had to start finding alternatives to not completely bond her out pretty much overnight, because I started to use her in so many of the Storm Pod nodes, so many of the 90++ nodes, and I basically realized I am just hyper fixating on this unit and forcing this unit to bond out extremely fast. That is how useful she has been. That is how powerful she has been. So again, it's up to you to determine if this is a unit you want to roll. But I will say there are other considerations that are going to make this banner very lucrative for people. So taking a look at the other units on Raid Up, we have Suzuka Gozen next. Suzuka Gozen is a Black Grail looper in and of herself. You will require quite a bit of investment in her. She is an AoE quick unit. So her being an AoE quick writer means that she's going to be at least a little bit susceptible to node structure. That's probably her biggest issue that she's going to have. But ultimately, at the end of the day, she is very strong, and as we mentioned, a Black Grail looper if the node is right. She increases the party's attack for 3 turns by 20%, increases the NP damage of any summer mode servant allies, which will naturally include herself, by 20%, gain critical stars by 15 here, and again, increase her own quick performance of 20% with her second skill. She's then going to increase critical damage of 50% and give herself a buff on attack that will increase her own attack by 10% for 3 turns whenever she lands a crit. Her third skill will increase one ally's NP generation rate, basically herself, so it's a targetable skill of 30% NP gain, which is really good for certain quick units, for 3 turns, and again, reduce their skill cooldown by 1. This can be obviously used on her. It's not going to be the greatest effect, but it could be something that might be beneficial if you're outside of a 3-turn window, and then it's going to charge her own gauge by 30% as well. Like I said, her looping, especially with the NP gain with the charge, it's fluid enough that she can Black Grail loop. Her NP is a 5-hit AoE quick NP that ignores invincibility for 1 turn and then increases her own damage against lawful alignment by 30%. This is a 30% power modifier because you can see it has the 1-turn duration. It's going to activate before the damage goes out, but this will also impact any cards that you use after the NP. So again, it will then deal damage to all enemies, and then it will deal super effective damage to Earth attribute enemies. So again, if you can find something that's both lawful and Earth, she will absolutely annihilate it. It's definitely a sort of feather in her cap and something that you can use really effectively. And I'm not even going to talk about the fact that she's basically the game's first race queen, so she's definitely a hot commodity in that regard. So again, Suzuka Gozen, definitely a very fun unit and definitely a very interesting unit, though just be careful about node structure when you go to try to loop with her. But realistically speaking, the big reason I think a lot of other people are going to try to roll is for Kuro Avenger here. Now, Clo von Einsburn, if you guys have never seen her before, is a very interesting unit. We were actually just talking about her before I began recording here, and you guys can see just kind of already that she will be a valuable asset to anybody's account based off of what she is capable of doing in her kit. So she is a single target quick Avenger. That in and of itself can be useful. She can be a decent damage dealing option for you. But realistically, most people are going to use Kuro for what we like to call the Kuro system. If you've never seen it, the way this is going to work is this is going to allow other units to get charged based off the number of enemies they hit with their attacks, particularly their NP. This is going to basically allow certain units to expand their looping capability. I have an entire video talking about this, so I'm going to try to do a very surface level explanation of it. But you can see it's going to increase the party's attack for 3 turns by up to 20%. It's going to increase the party's critical damage by a further 20%, and then basically give everybody in the party a buff on attack for 5 attacks over 5 turns, that for the next 5 attacks, whenever they hit the enemy, they will gain a stack of manuscript completion. The interesting thing to denote about this is NPs only consume 1 attack. Even though they hit multiple enemies, it will only count for 1 of the uses. This does mean you basically just get to keep using it in a conventional 3-turn. She will also grant herself a buff on attack for 3 turns that whenever she basically attacks with her quick card, she will gain critical damage of 10% up. So again, definitely an interesting skill, but where is the payoff for this manuscript completion buff? Gonna be basically in the 3rd skill. We'll talk about that coming up. The 2nd skill here is going to grant 1 ally gut status 1 time for 3 turns, so it's a targeted skill. It will also grant herself prepare revision buff for 1 time. What does that do? It literally will rotate her to the back line. So again, as you can see, it will put her in the last reserve slot after 1 turn. So when you pop this skill at the end of the next turn, boom, you are gone. So quite literally, sorry, at the end of this turn, you are gone. So quite literally, you are going to have the ability to rotate the party again without killing someone. This is very useful. Again, you can see you can only move if there are 2 other party members left in the field. That is to say, you can't rotate to the back line if there's not enough members to fill the front line. There has to at least be something there. Her third skill is going to increase the party's NP damage for 3 turns by 20%. It's also going to charge the NP gauge of allies with the manuscript completion status by 10% per its stacks. So this is where the Kuro system really comes into play. The number of enemies you've hit is the number of manuscript completion stacks that you have. The number of stacks that you have when Kuro activates this third skill is the amount of charge that you will get in 10% increments. So if you've managed to NP and hit multiple enemies, you're going to keep getting more charge due to this. So usually what people try to do is they try to activate this skill either on the 3rd turn of a loop to get the most charge, or on the 2nd turn so that they can rotate Kuro out of the party using her 2nd skill to bring in a 3rd support. Otherwise, you're not going to have easy access to things. So what does this mean? It means kind of like how Miss Crane rotates the party without killing somebody and allows for an additional support. So does Kuro. But Kuro is a charge support where Miss Crane is purely a damage support. Kuro also does benefit in terms of buffing the party's damage a little bit, but her ability to increase the charge of your devoted looper means that you're going to have access potentially to better craft essences and better starting situations. This means that the unit might be able to pop off even harder and gain even more damage. This is why people really like having a copy of Kuro Avenger. That being said, there's obviously some downsides. 1, she's a 4-star, so your party cost is going to be a nightmare for you, especially considering this will end up taking up what usually amounts to a single devoted damage dealer, 3 supports in addition to them, and Kuro. That is 5 of your party's 6 slots right there. You're pretty much guaranteed to have to use MASH as a backline unit for party cost reasons. You're going to have to be very careful with what craft essences you can bring because of the nature of this composition. So depending on who your damage dealer is, the lower the rarity, the more party cost you'll have. But the higher the rarity, obviously, then you're going to be really hurting for space. So this is one of the bigger drawbacks to her. The other big drawback is a very convoluted and clunky system. You have to actually think and understand how it works. You have to order the party appropriately so as to not mess it up. And you have to absolutely activate the skills in the correct time on the correct turn, or else you will again mess it up and end up screwing up your loop. So again, she has the capability of expanding how many units can actually Black Grail loop or start from 50% charge. The problem is she is going to be a unit that in many ways a lot of people don't want to have to use due to how many button presses and how much thinking they'll have to do to use her. She is a very powerful, very unique, and very fun unit if you understand her. But again, a lot of people will feel like they don't want to have to go through all of that for every node that they run. So again, is Kuro Avenger good? Yes. Let's take one look at the last aspect of her kit, her NP. As you can see, she has a 9-hit single target quick NP. It deals damage to 1 enemy and then deals super effective modifier scaling damage basically to enemies that is based off the number of manuscript completion stacks she has. The issue at play here is, remember, she redeems the manuscript completion amounts with her 3rd skill, so you have to be a little bit careful with how you use this. That being said, she has a guaranteed drain on her NP, which can be very useful, and an overcharge that stacks for multiple turns of quick up, even though it is only 10%. So again, Kuro Avenger, a very useful unit, depending on what you're trying to do, and very interesting with what she can do to, like, you know, again, meta compositions and things that you're trying to do for either farming or challenge. That is going to be the benefit of rolling this banner. This is going to be one of the most rolled banners of the entire year, and for obvious reasons. I do think, again, this banner is worthy of consideration, not just because of Artoria Caster Berserker here, but also because of Kuro Avenger added in. Not to mention Suzuka being here is just icing on the cake. So, up to you to determine if you want to roll here. I highly recommend it, but it is still not something you must do. The choice is yours. Ask yourself if you need a good single target berserker, if you want somebody that has a whole lot of charge that they can automate that with, or again, if you want something like Kuro that's going to allow you to have some fun, maybe reaching Black Grail compositions and things like that. Up to you, but ultimately, again, this is a very, very solid banner and one of the most solid ones in the entire year. Okay, chat, we're gonna end there. Also, I have to absolutely apologize. Fox, thank you for the raid. I don't know if you're still here, still lurking. I hope one of my mods got you a shout out. I was right in the middle of that. I didn't really want to interrupt myself due to everything that was going on. I'm gonna give Fox a shout out myself right here, just on the chance that nobody did. But there you go. I feel super bad about that. But whenever I'm doing the banner review videos, I'm recording for a long period of time, and I'm trying not to like interrupt it as much as possible. Boy, don't take my credit. I'll fight you. Okay, as long as you did it. As long as my mods did something. But again, I hope you had a good stream, Fox. I hope you guys had a fun one. What were you guys up to today? Victoria's my next 120 target. Hey, yo, same. Actually, that might not even be true. She might not be my next target. I don't know. I may 120 someone else before her. So. The prize is the friendships we made along the way. Exactly. But yeah, so we're actually doing pretty good. We're all the way to the summer event. I don't know if we'll finish this week based off this pace, but summer and anniversary usually take a long time. So the fact that I'm through that, the latter part of the year usually gets to be a little bit easier. You're doing some JP interludes and continuing some CCC. Ah, nice. Nice. I hope you're enjoying CCC. I've never gotten to play it myself, but I've heard good things. Yeah, unfortunately, chat, my voice is just about shot. So we're probably going to end it here for tonight. I will definitely pick up where we left off. Tomorrow we have the Marvel Rivals collab that I'll be doing with Chaldea Gurus, Kawaii 5-0, GNA Reviews, Simon IV. So it's definitely going to be some fun. I'll do some FGO before that because the collab starts, I think, around like 8. But obviously I won't be able to do banner review that night. So banner review will continue Friday. So I'm going to say, yeah, we probably won't finish banner review this week unless I just have all of Friday to do it, which at that point will be great as long as chat doesn't stun lock me with interesting concepts in question. I would roll that banner, but UDK Barcast. Oh, no. You can roll both. Yeah, we haven't even gotten to the second banner here, so I will definitely continue with this. Let me see who I'll be on tonight. Hey, yo, okay, so Ivy is actually on. We'll go give her a raid. Force her to stay up and not be able to end her stream. But again, like I said, I'll be playing with a bunch of the people tomorrow. Hope to see you guys there for that. Should be fun. It is actually, ironically enough, the day before the new Marvel Rivals patch, which I'll definitely be checking out. But again, I hope you guys had a fun one tonight. I hope you found it informative. We definitely have a lot more to cover, and I will see you guys for the next one. Go give Miss Ivy my love, and have a good evening.